Welcome back to Le Mans. We're in race mode, really, for race 3, our third race of the Le Mans Esports Super Final. We've had 2 races here so far from the pre-90s Le Mans circuit layout, and this is the first time over this Super Final that we're moving away from Le Mans. We're going to Silverstone this time round, and we're going to the modern prototype. So this should be quick, and this should be rather exciting. So to talk us through and to build up to this race, it's time to hand over to a new commentator for today. We've got James Kirk, and he's joined by Harry Jackson.
Bonjour, bonjour, allez, allons-y. From France to Silverstone, the home of British motor racing, one of my favourite circuits of all time, and another big shift, Harry, going from the 1960s, some 60 years forward into the 2010s to the modern prototypes.
It's crazy, like what we're going to see from the first 2 races now, as you say, based in the 60s, then bringing things all the way forward to the present in a completely new, almost unrecognisable era of racing. It's going to be something new and different, that's for sure.
Would you say that this is an ideal chance for the drivers to switch out? Because, I mean, to be fair as well, we're talking about super slidey, super powerful monsters that have been flying down the back straight of Le Mans to things which are just absolutely planted to the ground. Actually, we both had a chance to have a go in these beasts, albeit not at Silverstone necessarily, but they're a completely different package, aren't they? You actually have to rely on the downforce through the corners rather than just floor out the shorthand corners to get on the power and make the most of it.
Absolutely. Modern prototype, we're looking at four-wheel drive systems, so they can get into a corner, get the car rotated, and just fire it out without pretty much any worry at all. So, yeah. As you say, high downforce is going to mean a track like Silverstone is a perfect combination as far as I'm concerned. So, it could make the racing quite spicy. All high-speed stuff. They're going to have to be really brave to try and make any kind of overtaking manoeuvre, but that's what we're here for. It's what we all love to see.
I like spicy. So let's head on over into the race then. Race number 3 of the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. It is Silverstone. It is 95 laps of Silverstone, the longest race that these guys will have to endure, at least for the first half of our 24 hours. It's going to be mad, starting at the back. A team with a target on their back. I was a poet and I didn't know it. Going to go into the race very soon, though. It's going to be mad starting at the back. Like I say, it's going to be SMP on pole position. Not had a great time of it. They've still got their fans. They're ready to go, and fingers crossed, they'll have a good time. And we're going off here then at Silverstone. Tricky first corner already. Someone onto the grass. That's the CMP car, and moving through into turn 1. It seems like it's Tyrell has gotten the best of proceedings. And into the first section we go in. So it's Avocados there losing out to P2. It's Tyrell up to P1. So already SMP has lost out. Someone going wide there as well. Very, very messy start. And Tyrell already, Harry, again, making the most of it. It's a difficult corner at the best of times, turn 1 at Silverstone. But they've made it work as the rest of the pack completely scrap around heading into the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a dream start and wrote down on a bit of paper, that's what would be posted to Tyrell, that's for sure. They've got everything they could possibly want. First place, and there's a big gap behind them. They've avoided all the carnage. That has literally happened pretty much from second place downwards, but they look to be just about sorting themselves out now as they make it down the old pit straight towards Copse Corner. So
it's through what was the old start-finish line, of course. These prototypes, they've got to love this circuit, don't they? So downforce dependent, into one of the most downforce dependent parts of the circuit, into Maggots, into Beckett's, and out to Chapel. Looking at who's lost out the most. SMP down to 12th. Baguette already up to 2nd, so continuing their good form. They'll want to bounce back, of course, after a difficult end to race number 2. And through then into Stowe, into the final part of our lap, down to Vale and into Club. Is Tyrell still leading? Just under a second from Baguette. Wildcats with another good start. Another team wanting to bounce back from a difficult race 2. Mighty 38 rounding out the top 5. End of lap 1, though, is one of the teams who's had the most difficulties today. Tyrell, they're out in front, and fingers crossed that they can make this count now, Harry, because they need to get some good points on the board if they want to edge on forward their chances in the final.
Absolutely, and it's what this competition promotes and this series promotes, the reverse grid especially. It gives everyone an opportunity, and this is Tyrell's opportunity in race 3. I'm sure they'll have more as the series goes on, but for now, they've got the lead. Baguetta's closing in rapidly though, and so we're going to see some fighting for the lead in the next couple of laps, I reckon. And we're going to see what these cars are like to battle on track. It's going to be quite difficult, I think, for them, because like I said, there's such high speed involved, such precision needed to be able to navigate these cars around this racetrack. But it's a perfect racetrack for it. It's Silverstone. It's the home of British Motors Racing. So we're going to see what these Porsches and Audis can deliver for us.
It is a long race. And so Baguette closing in that gap to 7/10 of a second. They'll be eager to make their way out of any sort of traffic that they need to navigate. Not to say the tyre wall is going to be traffic, of course. We've seen some pretty standout performances so far over the first couple of races. But for Baguette, it's always had a little bit of a poor exit from the tyre wall. And just to have a little look over the points table, just to give everyone an idea of where we are. But okay, here we go, coming up on screen now. So it's, of course, as we were saying going into this, Mad Motorsport, 2 wins from 2. They are looking incredibly, incredibly good. Did an excellent job in race number 2 to come from the back through to first. 5 full points ahead of Baguette Racing, Kitty Crew as well. I think it's fair to say that if you're the rest of the field, you kind of want to gang up on them, like in a calm and friendly way and in a clean way, of course, but that is the one team that you don't want to be letting through.
Absolutely. I mean, they're all going to be conscious of top 3 positions, but they also need to keep in mind, and almost as a priority as well, is going to be the fact that every position counts. So, when you've got a team after 2 races that's already 5 points clear, essentially at this stage 5 seconds lead into the final race. A long way to go before we get to that point, of course, but it still matters at this point. They've got that 5-second advantage, 5-point advantage, so these teams need to not work together, but as you say, certain teams are going to get targets on their back to make sure that if they see them on track, they know they need to make that move rather than perhaps playing it a little bit safer, not obviously putting anyone in danger of any crashes, of course.
Looking now at the Veloci car, the dark blue and the black. A middling session last time out in race 2. Never really looked like they got going, and struggling in the early stages here once again down in P10. I had them down as one of my personal favourites, Harry, honestly. Looking at the lineup, they play down their chances. And it was a difficult day at the office, certainly, and we want to extend a big thank you, by the way, to the FIA, WEC officials who've dropped on by to say hello. Lots of people saying hello, lots of wonderful guests that we've had throughout this broadcast so far. Fingers crossed we'll have some more on the way later on.
It's great to see so many people here taking in the atmosphere that we've got. They're almost like these somewhat pit garage-like setups that they've got, with all the teams individually laid out for them to watch over their favourites. If they come here without perhaps being all too involved with esports, they can get a grasp of it and try and follow teams from this point. It's a great way of introducing them to it, and they're getting a great show with a variety of different cars across this entire series. Of course, we've got the most modern of cars here, the modern prototypes involved. We've got a move going on by looks of things as we head into turns 2, 3 and 4.
So whilst you're making up a position then, whilst we're away, up to P9. Wildcats, Mad, further on up the road. Advocatus and Simple slightly further down the order, though stay tuned for race number 4. That might not be the case. A little teaser for later on. Oh goodness, I'm getting all excited, and we're only on lap 4, of course. There's a good scrap down here in the midfield, certainly. And let's talk a little bit more about these cars in particular, Harry, because we've been going around, and admittedly a lot of teams, they don't necessarily want to share their in-depth strategies, but certainly from the impression that we get, this Porsche, this Audi, very, very different beasts, and the Porsche looking to have the edge over these 3 hours.
Yeah, they are very closely matched. There are going to be bigger differences between cars in other series. This one looks like it does favour the Porsche ever so slightly, but the fact that there's only 2 million of the in-game credits and garage allowance that they have for this entire series, only 2 million between them, the Porsche being slightly more expensive than the Audi, suggests that there's not a lot to choose between them. Obviously, main differences I think are going to come down to pit strategy. We keep mentioning it, but it's going to be a big part, and most likely in this category in particular. It sounds like we're going to be looking at maybe 25-minute, 30-minute stints, and we're here for 3 hours, so they're going to be racking up those pit stops, and we're going to have to try and keep on track of that as best we can and keep you guys watching, informed as to what's happening. But at the moment we've got some close action on track with what looks like the CNP car as we now cut to Baguette following Tyrewall 1-2 on track, and they seem to have made a little breakaway, which is good for them. It's whether they continue almost working together to keep building that gap over the rest, or if Baguette want to try and get the lead and just go for it themselves. Obviously, they might be reading from last race and they want to show what they're made of.
Baguette Racing have been biding their time, haven't they? Ever since the start, it was Tyrewall away, they were nice and in the clear. But we've seen this story all too many times before in motorsport. They stay close, they bide their time, and it's always a 50-50 coin flip. Are they going to make the right move at the right time, or are they going to leave it a little bit too long, maybe damage their chances later in the race? For Baguette, there is certainly a point to be proven. We were actually, myself and Bo, backstage, we were talking about, that was it contact with Williams, or was it overzealousness from the side of Baguette to just defend and race control, ultimately the ones who decide these things. Came down on, it was just overzealous on their part, and looking to do the undercut here at Stowe, but unable to make their way past the Baguette Racing. I know it's early in the race, Harry, but surely as a driver, I'm sure you'll know yourself, is when you have these quick fire formats of race after race after race after race, you always want to bounce back with a good result. And I feel like Baguette Racing, they're in with a good shot of a win here, certainly. They've already picked up money. They've also thrown away money. They know the dangers, the risks, and the rewards of playing their cards right in Silverstone.
Absolutely, but it's important for them to remember there's a lock-up, and now they're getting the undercut on Tyrewall, back end sliding, and they're side by side as they come through onto the Wellington Straight, still side by side as they're heading down towards the braking zone. Nothing to choose between them. It's going to be who's going to be the bravest on the brakes. You'd expect to be Baguette with the inside line. 3 hours this race, they've got to be careful. They can't afford to ruin it on lap 6 of 95, and they do indeed make that move for the lead. Tyrewall still there though, really pushing them along, quite literally in fact, as they're now nose to tail down the old pit straight, and I mean they are right there. There's nothing between them at all, pulling out the slipstream, but they're not close enough to make a move. They've got to be careful that they avoid contact and don't pick up any silly penalties for maybe causing a collision by following that closely, but they've sorted themselves out now.
Couldn't have put it better myself. And that was a strong challenge from Tyrewall. Despite losing the lead, they just wanted to put that little bit of pressure on Baguette to see whether a mistake couldn't be forced. And that was well played from Baguette, who now take the lead of this race. And from their perspective, they'll just be looking to get their head down, put in the laps, make their way forward and extend that gap as much as possible. We are potentially in for a lot of pit stops in this 3-hour spectacle. Baguette will be certain to give themselves as much of an advantage as possible. Looking further down the field, let's talk a little bit about Mad again. Zoomed through the field in race number 2. They've had a much more difficult time of things, mired in the midfield in P7. But from your perspective, is this a race whereas Baguette are looking to bounce back? For Mad, they're already on 24 points, 2 wins in 2. Are they able to just sit back and take the points here and there now?
It's a difficult one. You can't get complacent. You can't. Obviously, you've got what you have in the bank already. That's stored. You're not going to lose that. But they can't afford to have an easy race, so to speak, and not push the boundary of what they can do just to try and get some solid results, but not awesome results for them like they've had already in the first 2 races. So I think they're struggling a bit. I mean, 7th place is not bad at the moment, but they'll be certainly to look to make their way forward as the race goes on. Still a very, very, very long way to go, so they're probably just keeping their powder dry for the time being. It's difficult when all the cars are close together. It's very difficult to try and fight your way through because everyone's fighting everyone and defending and whatnot. So as the cars get more spread out, they can maybe look to pick up their pace, try and pick off cars one by one as the race leader looks to have been making a small mistake through the Magnus and Beckett's complex, and just like that, that gap that they've been building for a lap and a half is gone, and now Tyrell with a slipstream looking to make a move down into Stowe.
On the Hangar Straight, you've always got a good opportunity into Stowe, but you need to be solidly alongside, and that wasn't the case on this particular occasion. And so Tyrell are going to be keeping Baguette honest in the opening stages of the Silverstone 3 hours, although that's contact into the back of the Baguette car. I think that the Tyrell has been able to save itself. There it is. It's a scary moment for them, just completely misjudging that braking zone. That could have ended in tears. They just about got away with it.
these cars are so difficult to drive. When you're nose to tail like that, the way to drive them is you really sort of launch it into the apex, you slow it right down, almost over slow through the apex so that you can get the car rotating, and then you launch out with that four-wheel drive system. So they might have just been caught out by just how slow Baguette were going to go to try and obviously get the perfect run out and try and increase that gap. But by doing that, Tyrrell may have just misjudged it and obviously contact into the back of the Baguette car. We're hoping that that's not going to cause any sort of aero damage to either car. No, hitting the front of the car could potentially cause understeer, damage to the rear might cause a bit of oversteer, but they look to be okay for now. We'll have to see as they go on. There's a bit of a lock-up for one of the cars here. There's just some contact and cars in the gravel. We'll have to try and see who that is. It looks like it's Kitty Crew and possibly Zach's...
looks like the Mighty 38,
yes.
I think.
Still on the grass trying to recover.
Go for a bit of lawn mowing, not the optimal line around Silverstone, it's got to be honest. And I can't really tell what even happened. It looked like they just got caught up on each other on the exit there. It's cost both of them massively. And so look at CMP, who've been able to benefit massively, up onto the podium, yet to put any money in the bank, so to speak. They'll be delighted to be up in with the shot of it now. Plenty of time still for Kitty Crew and for Mighty 38 to recover, though. Williams up into fourth as well because of that mad gain a couple of positions as well. And it looks like Mighty 38, the better of the two, to come out from that as well. P5. And so it's now Baguette, your leaders by 6/10, so still not able to extend that gap over a second. And CMP, now your crew in P3 with the Brazilian Renan Negrini, currently riding in the car on board with Baguette. It's Alexandre Arnaud currently in that machine. And in the tyre wall, I had a lovely chat. We had a lovely chat at the beginning of the show, of course, with Aaron Martin Pilkington, better known as Militia, a caster for Forza on a regular basis. I'm sure he'll be determined to show that casters aren't just good at talking, they can also race at the same time. Can't say the same for myself, of course. I'm not too great in a race on a wheel, let alone a pad. Great to see him so competitive, though. Putting in a really good shift, and to keep the pressure on Baguette like this is a skill in itself almost. He may be hanging on, but by staying there, by staying relevant, by staying in the rearview mirrors, Harry, it just offers that persistent threat. You never know what could happen.
Exactly, we've seen it a few laps ago though, Baguette making a mistake at this part of the racetrack, and that gap that they had built at the time was eradicated. So there's another mistake from CNP this time, getting completely out of shape through the middle of Maggotts and Beckett's, and they've lost a position to, I believe, is that going to be Williams?
It's the Williams, yeah.
By the looks of things. So they've moved up into the final podium position, CNP down to fourth, that's Renan Negrini at the wheel. So again, it's easy to make mistakes in these cars. They're so technical, so high speed, so on the edge that any small mistake really punches you hard, and we're seeing it as the leaders are still inseparable.
You lose your faith for one moment in these cars and it'll bite you back. It demands your respect, it demands your authority to plant them through the corners, and the man known as Prodigy in gaming circles found that out the hard way. Good to see Michael Coyne though up there. Nice interview with him, of course, earlier on. Confessed to be a night owl, but taking one of the earlier stints here today. And still nose to tail are this Baguette and Tyre Wall car. A real great showing from Tyre Wall. A reminder of how many points they've scored so far. 3 and 4 points. So consistent, but sadly consistently at the back. I mean, on current pace at the moment, you've got to say that this is one of their best chances, potentially of the entire day, to score some big points. Not just that, but to score money as well. And for a number of these teams, another point really worth touching on. Some of these guys know that they're not going to be in it at the end. They feel like they don't have the strength in depth, the overall pace, the star driver to take them through to that. So they're going to be looking at 1, 2, maybe 3 races where they can pick up some money. And I've got a feeling that for Tyre Wall, they're looking for podiums. This is as good a chance as any. 9th of the way through this race. Still early days, but a good start is better than a bad one.
It is, and what it might be starting to highlight is the fact that with this series we've got 7 different classes and categories going on. It's not going to suit everyone. People probably have their favourite or the one that they're best at, and this might be an example of Tyre Wall. You know, they've had okay but not spectacular results in the first 2 races, which featured 2 very similar cars, you know, old classics from the 60s. We're now in modern prototypes, and they are right on the leader's pace. So maybe it's just the fact that these cars suit those drivers better, and we're going to see that throughout a lot of teams throughout the entirety of this series, which is always going to keep it ebbing and flowing. which is great to see. It's what we all want, is close, hard racing, and that's exactly what we're getting.
So closing in. Once again, moving into the arena section. There he is, the man himself, Aaron Martin Pilkington. Fascinating team composition as well, this one. So you've got a Brit, a South Korean, and a Japanese man. It sounds like the beginning of a pub joke, but it's one of the fascinating parts about this entire Le Mans Esports series, I think. The fact that we can bring these people from so many different parts of the world together. And I think it was Chris who brought it up earlier, the fact that they have to utilize Google Translate in order to get instructions over to each other. Speaking of instructions, I'm sure there's going to be plenty being barked out to the drivers of these two cars. Kitty Crew looking to bounce back up against the Wildcats in 7th. Is currently Force 1, Daniel Nyman at the wheel, looking to go around the outside of Cop's corner. You're bold to go out there. You're even bolder to go close to the wall, keeping it in side by side. A debatable overtake, I would say. It's slightly off circuit, Harry, but for the moment, he's ahead. We await a judgment from race control as to whether that was legal or not.
Well, I know the exact defence of that one is going to be, well, I was pushed off the circuit, but it happens day in, day out in motor racing. As we've got the leaders in the pit lane.
Pits.
Literally nose to tail. They might even be connected at this point. It's slightly odd to see, but it's what we said. We're lap 11 of 95, and they're in the pit. They're all coming into the pit lane. Well, at least the Porsches are. We'll have to keep an eye on the Audi, as there may be an option for the Audi to go slightly longer. And obviously, over a 3-hour race, that's going to pay dividends. But we'll try and keep an eye on that if we can. But these guys are making their first pit stop of what's going to be many.
It feels like the train journey here. You're getting a little bit closer, getting to know each other a little better. And on the way out of the pits now, the question is, are they going to be able to beat out the Audis? Still nose to tail on exit.
Tyre Wall ahead of Baguette.
But more importantly, as you rightly point out, Tyre Wall have been able to jump them in the pit stops, and so it's now, but you're not going to want to do that on your outlap. Tyre Wall give a massive opportunity for Baguette to steal it back through on the inside. Tyre Wall are going to maintain their position for now, but they've compromised their exit. And on to this straight is still, well, it was neck and neck for about all of 2 seconds, Harry. Massive mistake from Tyre Wall, an opportunity gifted to them to retake the lead. Baguette have punished them within the first 30 seconds of being back out the pit lane.
It's cold tyres, that's exactly what that is. They come in the pit lane, cold tyres, they don't turn and they don't grip anywhere near as what they've been used to for the first 11 laps, so that might have been what's caught them out. Obviously, a driver change as well. Crucial to pick that up. Now, the driver's hopping in for the first time, and what does he do? He locks up at the first corner. We've got Kitty Crew running slightly wide on the exit of the old final corner, but it doesn't seem to have cost them too much, nothing like what happened to them earlier. But these two still inseparable up the front, and it's shaping out to be a really good race. We've had nearly 12 laps, a pit stop included, and we still can't separate them. It bodes well for the entirety of the race, and there's still other battles going on further down the grid as well, which we can't see because these two are doing such a great job up front.
It bodes well for us, doesn't it? It bodes well for a very good race ahead, although Kitty Crew again there with another mistake, allowing the Wildcats back through. Or it might have been a call from race control, who knows? But either way, Kitty Crew back down to 9th, the Wildcats back up to 8th. And let's look at our Veloci story as well. The top Audi, I believe, at the moment.
You would indeed be correct. Yes, Audi R18, they are in. So doing a great job. It's one of them where, as we said at the start, there's not a lot between them in terms of price. So, that's audacious from Tyre Wall, but luckily they just managed to stop in time. But I think what they're trying to do is they're just trying to put pressure on Baguette, force them into a mistake. Show their nose into corners, not commit to an overtake, but show their intent. And with the way they're going to be looking in their mirrors, they're going to start getting quite scared, I imagine, and they might force them into a mistake. But Baguette Racing have got to hold their nerve.
Well, we're starting to, I feel, get a better picture. Certainly, it's not just they're hanging on to the back, they are keeping pace. Keeping pace also with the Kitty Crew back for round 2 with this Wildcats squad. Love the livery choice, by the way. Purple and orange. They certainly are going to make a bold impression here with those choices. Kitty Crew, a bold choice with the logo, of course, but I like to call them a super team of individuals, really. They're not an organisation, so to speak, but certainly some of the top racers in Forza that you'll find around the planet. putting the Wildcats under heavy pressure. And to be fair, out of all the teams on this grid, the Wildcats, we've seen them cave into pressure before already. So I feel like the Kitty Crew know what they're doing. They can hope to bide their time, maybe not outside of Cop's off the track overtake this time around though.
Just to interject quickly, we've had confirmation that the Kitty Crew cars did have to give the position back from earlier where they overtook off the track. So their defence of being pushed out, like always, didn't work.
It's good to see. Big shout out to our diligent race stewards, by the way. Doing an excellent job so far. This event will continue to do so, I'm absolutely sure, but an opportunity here now. Oh! For the Kitty Crew on the inside of Club. Similar situation to elsewhere on track. You want to be side by side, not looking to force the door open there. A little bit wide on the exit though of turn 1 for the Wildcats, going a little bit deep into the arena section as well, so starting to make these mistakes. And Kitty Crew looking for the undercut, but that's a decent exit out of the arena section for the Wildcats there. It's like a wooden bridge, isn't it? It's creaking ever so slightly, their defences, but they're holding for now, and the longer that they can hold it, the more frustrated the Kitty Crew are going to be, and it sort of goes in swings and roundabouts in that way, doesn't it? The Kitty Crew, are they going to get frustrated before the defences crack? Another deep entrance from the Wildcats. Consistency is betraying them a little.
Yeah, all they've really got to try and do is try and focus on the exit of the corners, get the launch out of it, and then they'll be safe. But by doing that, they're leaving the door open, and we're seeing that the Kitty Crew team are not afraid of sticking the car up the inside if they need to. So, that's out of shape. They're now side by side through Magnus and Beckett's. That's dangerous if I've ever seen it. But Kitty Crew muscle their way through just about, and I think that was just on the side of legal. Obviously started from the mistake, but they've capitalised on it.
A scary move, but a lovely move nonetheless. And so Kitty Crew this time on merit up into P8, and the Wildcats demoted to 9th. This lap 15 just ticked over onto lap 15 out of 95. Still a good majority of the 3 hours of this race left to go. Still plenty of pit stops ahead of us, so the strategy still very much in play. And still leading the way are Baguette Racing. And since we were watching that Kitty Crew battle for the first time this race, Harry, extended that gap to over 1 second. I feel like that is a definitive enough gap to really start to make their mark on this race. Don't count out Tyrewall just yet, of course. It's not like the gap is extending out 10th after 10th to couple of 10th after couple of 10th, but there's something there to hold on to at least. There's something to defend without worrying about the slipstream behind.
I think early part of the race, they've both been trying to focus on sort of getting out in front and then trying to make a break for it, so to speak. But I think they've now seen that they've both got very good pace compared to the cars around them. So maybe Tyrewall just sort of giving a little bit of a gap, so they've got no perfect vision. No, it can play a part. If you've got a car right in front of you, it can really start putting you off on your turning points, your braking zone. So if you leave a bit of a gap, it makes it easier to drive essentially. So they might just be, as we said earlier, keeping their powder dry and making the most of it, as we've got a move going on here as well, as the Veloci car's been passed.
Veloci absolutely helpless to defend that one, and I can't help but wonder whether there was a slight mistake in there, because okay, the Porsche is better, but was it that much better, really?
I think there must have been a mistake maybe on the exit. If you just drop the tyre over the exit curb, it can sometimes spit you out, so he might have just made a massive save, and unfortunately we haven't seen it, but we've just seen the end part of them recovering and being overtaken, which is a shame for them, but at least they're not in the wall if it was a mistake.
It's a long game for Veloci, whether it was a mistake or whether it's just the pace of their car falling down the order. Down to P9 now as the Wildcats make their move as well. Williams still in P3. And on that note, I believe we're going to head on over to our very handsome man down on the stage. It's Bryn, and he's going to be talking to the Kitty Crew.
Steady on, it's the makeup. Right, I'm here with Kitty Crew, and I'm here with Evan from Kitty Crew, just to talk through the incident there with Wildcats. From the outside looking in, it looked like went off, didn't yield, and I'm not sure if you got a penalty. Talk us through it from your point of view.
Yeah, so there was a little bit of contact. Wildcats actually slid up into us and they pushed us off track, and they actually ended up lifting and giving us the position after. So we asked to investigate that, but eventually Dan ended up having an unfortunate mistake that let them by anyway, so no harm done.
It's too polite, isn't it? No, you go first. No, you go first. No, after you. So good results so far, actually. If we look down at your list so far for today, 4th and the 3rd, decent points haul, got some money in the back pocket as well as a team. Where you are right now, currently 7th, but a very, very long way to go. What are your hopes and your goals for this race?
I think Dan's going to start charging through the field, and I think a podium is very possible.
So the target for now is for Daniel to really get the hammer down, really go for it, and then you're going to tell us who's going to get in the seat after?
Yeah, that'll be me. Hopefully I can close up the race nice for Dan. He's running really fast and making a lot of moves. Had some unfortunate incidents right off the start, but he's charging through the field.
Yeah, well, these things happen, don't they? What is your plan as a team for making sure you get decent rest breaks and staying fresh and focused for this huge 20.5-hour racing marathon?
Yeah, our plan, it's been to give Zoom a lot of rest, Dan a lot of rest, and I'm just taking the bullet. That's pretty much where we went, what we went for. So I end up doing most of the races and don't have more than a 2-hour break at a time. The other guys have about a 5-hour break at some times. After this, Dan's going to take his break, and he'll come back fresh for Sebring.
Oh, there you go. So Evan proving that not all heroes wear capes. Back to you then, over to Harry and James.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Much appreciated, Bryn. And back on with the race. And we've seen another mistake, I believe, from Veloci. We've just seen another mistake there from Advocatus, who are losing it, and completely round there at turn 1. Down in P11, Delay in the car. And they've got, I would argue, one of the best names on the grid, but sadly, consistency once again, the plague of their races. I'm surprised they're not in 12th, but I'm sure they'll be wishing that they were off the screen, Harry, because that was a nasty one.
It was. It's difficult to say. They just got a bit wide into turn 1, got onto the bumpy AstroTurf and especially the grass, and at that point it just hooked the car around. They did manage to catch the first slide, but obviously overcorrected and around it went. But as you say, unfortunately, they're down in 11th, SMP down in 12th behind them, not in a position to capitalise. So unfortunately at the moment it's a bit of a nothing race for them, but a long way to go.
So if we're looking at 11 laps per stint, roughly, we're going to be expecting our friends over in the Porsches in, another 3 laps, 4 laps, 5 laps or so. Potential undercuts, perhaps. And, we saw them lose it just a moment ago. Advocatus, more than happy to talk to Bryn, though. Over to
Not quite, no. I looked over here at Advocatus Diablo, otherwise known as Lionheart, a very, very cool name. And the driver in the seat there, massive spin, massive off as we saw. I thought I'll come over here and have a quick word with the team. And as I got here, James, I thought one of the team there, head in hands, absolute despair. Then I realised he was asleep. So he's one of the teams asleep, didn't get to see that. The other one just watching quietly. They're a very good poker team, these three. They don't seem to reveal very much emotion, but you know a lot is going on. He seems to be back on it, though. He's 11th place. He's got the hammer down again, and hopefully building some time there, trying to gain as much as he can. I'm looking at who is ahead of him in 10th place, and it is Keep It Simple. So they're going to be chasing. We'll see what happens over the next few laps.
Oh boy. You know what? I'm shocked at how he's been able to get to sleep. I'll be brief with you, audience. I'm not planning on. Oh my goodness, I'm not planning on doing that either. Kitty Crew with a mega overtake around the outside of turn 1 on Mad. Forget my sleep schedule. That was awesome.
I think we could all forget your sleep schedule, to be honest, but that's fine. Yeah, a great move. Ran the outside of turn 1. I mean, how and why? But it worked. They managed to. I mean, it takes 2 good drivers to make that kind of move work. If the car on the inside, though, commits fully, it's going to end in disaster. So respect to both those guys behind the wheel that they played fair and could live to fight another day.
And so for MAD, who've been dominating so much over the course of the first 2 races, a challenge for them. A big challenge in that. Look at Kitty Crew, they're flying up the order, straight onto the back of Mighty 38. I hope we can go and travel on board with them. They're just going to be heading into Maggots and Beckett's now. I mean, further on up the road as well, I think that might potentially be P4 in view as well. So the Kitty Crew on a real charge here. Of course, remember back to when they struggled to overtake the Wildcats. All of a sudden, they find themselves in much more exciting territory, looking to the outside of the mighty 38 machine. Unable to do anything into Stowe on this particular lap.
Worth noting that it looks like for some reason Baguette have dropped down to third on the track, so we've still got Tyrewall in the lead, and then Williams have actually jumped up to second. So I don't know if it's maybe something to do with the driver change perhaps that's caused that, or maybe a small mistake somewhere. But on screen we've got some great battle between Mighty 38 and Kitty Crew, who are on an absolute rampage. They made a move around the outside of turn 1 last lap. No, next lap they're already onto the next car, and just ahead of them you've got CNP as well, so they're not far away from 4th place after what looked like quite a few issues, only a few laps before.
There is still 3 to 4 seconds between that Podium and CNP though, so for Kitty Crew to get in with that chance of more money in this particular round, they're going to have to get their business done, stamped off in the mail nice and early. Lap 20 of 95, and still following the mighty 38 car. Currently in there is Christopher Farkas. Of course, remember that mighty 38 only running 2 drivers in this particular event, so the strain, the tiredness is going to be mounting up at a bit more of a rapid rate than with some of these other teams. Doing mightily well, pardon the pun, but doing mightily well are Kitty Crew as well. They were looking around the outside of Maggots there. We've seen them pull off this sort of move before, but they have to filter in behind as we go through Beckett's, out of Chapel, onto the Hangar Straight, and this looks like a much, much better exit from the Kitty Crew. Nyman to the left, looking to go out to Stowe, but look at that top speed. Oh, look, forget the top speed from mighty 38. Look at the undercut from Kitty Crew, and a bit of racemanship there, just ushering him out to the outside, going around the outside of Club now. Move completed over a couple of corners. Brilliant stuff there from the Kitty Crew. Great defense from Farkas, though. He did everything he could.
He did, but unfortunately he was powerless to stop that move happening, and it's beautiful because it happened about 5 corners after it started. Setting up in the middle of Maggots and Beckett's, getting the car ahead offline, the mighty 38 car offline, and they're just working that switch back through the next 3 or 4 corners until they were finally in a position to fully complete the move. Beautiful driving for both of them, but great move.
So Kitty Crew up to 5th. They're looking to power their way towards 4th. That little battle took about lap and a half, and so it's allowed CNP to pull ahead by just a little. Of course, I would argue one of the better, if not best American drivers out there. That's up for debate in terms of the Forza circles. He don't really care about much. He won't care much about his ego or his driving style. He just wants to focus on getting up to Negrini up in front. You can see there the yellow and black machine flying on down the road. And fair play to Farkas here. He's been able to hang on to the back of the Kitty Crew car as well. Maybe hoping to share in the spoils for later if he can hang on to that slipstream, if he can keep touch with Nyman ahead, then maybe the CMP will be for taking later on.
Absolutely. So if you can't keep the car behind, then you can wait for them to make the move and then just latch onto them as Farkas is doing here, and sort of they can drag you along there. You get the benefit of slipstream as well for the lap after lap, gaining you time, and they essentially just drag you up to the car in front, which is what's happening here. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when the pair of them actually get onto the back of CMP and look to start making overtaking manoeuvres. Who's going to be the beneficiary out of those 3?
And just like that, you'd swear that we've been warped forward in time by 5 or 6 laps, but no, the information is correct on your screen. It is only a lap later, and Kitty Crew are staring down the barrel of 4th place, looking to the inside. As we head into Brooklands, he's going to pull back in, more of a sighter than anything, but look at mighty 38. Now, we were considering if they could hold on to the back of Kitty Crew, and they have done wonderfully. So CMP, Kitty Crew, and Mighty 38 all fighting over 4. So this is not even for a money place, but it is for good points, and that will count for them later once we reach race 9, the super final. Round Cop's corner. The Greenie, Prodigy, looking just to hold on as much as he can. But Nyman's pace is looking absolutely lightning at the moment. Almost too irresistible to try and defend off. Oh, as though it looks like we've lost the Mighty 38 car. Yeah, Mighty 38 have lost it into Maggots, and they've gifted the position to MAD, so now it's down from a 3-horse to a 2-horse race in this battle for 4th. One less thing for Nyman to worry about. Looked down the inside of the CMP car, but all he saw was a door closing, and both of them coming to the pits.
Yeah, we saw just a moment ago in the middle of Maggots and Beckett's that Mighty 38 car just losing the back end. It looks like he recovered it just in time before they hit the wall, thankfully for them, but say they dropped behind the other car that's overtaken him. I'll try and find out who that was. But they've lost a few positions. It's a shame as we were just building them up, but hopefully you won't recognise that as a commentator curse. But, you know, he was doing a great job. Race isn't over. It's still a long way to go. Another round of pit stops, 20-odd laps in, and we'll see how they deal with, obviously, another driver change coming in, potentially. Obviously, they don't have to change drivers at this point. They've made their one compulsory driver change, but if they don't change driver anymore until the end of the race, they're really going to be racking up that hourly limit or maximum hour limit for that driver. So it'll be interesting to find out what sort of strategies and tactics they're applying as to who's driving and when, as we've got cars overtaking each other on the exit of the pit lane as they rejoin the track.
Very bizarre. Very bizarre. Of course, problem with cold tyres as well coming back into effect. Interesting three-way battle coming out here now. So it's Mighty 38, MAD, and I think it's at the Wildcats behind as well. A scrappy exit from MAD. This is as scrappy as we have seen them pretty much all day long. And down the inside, Farker says, thank you very much. But then Mad says, no, thank you. Defends off the both of them, and Wildcats are saying, 2 free positions. Why, thank you. How kind of you. We're going to take that. We're going to move on up the positions. And so they benefit. Of course, the cheese roller himself, Jacob, in the car. And so up to 6 they go. Still behind CMP. So CMP, I mean, honestly, they're the biggest gainers out of all of this. They've flown on up the road. And actually, I noticed we've got some difference in terms of up the top tyre wall. They have yet to come in. And so all of a sudden, we're starting to see a split in the strategy between some of these Porsches. Again, it's going to affect later stints, perhaps. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Absolutely. So it's interesting to find out what happened in the pits. To say we saw them go in with 2 of them sort of nose to tail, the Kitty crew being one of them, and then they've come out sort of in the group behind where they went in. So they've, as I say, come off worse on that. And then say CMP, the big winners, and the leaders for some reason still haven't pitted. Obviously, the rest of them have, but actually no, they have all made a pit stop, so that's fine. They are all on target at this point.
I had not noticed just how close the gap was between Baguette and tyre wall. So Baguette must have made a mistake somewhere. They must have made a mistake somewhere, and so that potential lack of pit stops that we were talking about has come true. And back to this battle then between the Wildcats and MAD, Mighty 38 in close pursuit. For the Wildcats, it's been a ride, hasn't it? It feels like they're being gifted the positions, but they don't quite have the natural pace to try and dictate the order of things. And so many mistakes this race. It's not even been between 2 drivers necessarily, barring that one incident between Mighty 38 and the Kitty crew, which we saw earlier. The cars just look difficult to handle for all the drivers out on track, and I got the feeling that these pit stops, they kind of break the flow up a lot, don't they? So you want to get into the groove, but then you've got to come in, you've got to warm up the tyres again, and then by the time that you've got it to your perfect window, you're back in again. It's an incredibly vicious circle that these guys are having to deal with. And talking about vicious, we might see MAD losing another position. Yet again, Mighty 38 look interested. They look very interested indeed. Before they've even hit Stowe, they've been able to take the position.
So it's just toing and throwing, isn't it, between like 3 or 4 cars. We see them sort of jumping up positions, they're making a small mistake, and then they lose those positions again as this battle is still raging on. MAD not wanting to give up that position too easily, so looking to try and work some kind of undercut onto the position they've just lost. But by doing this, you can see how much distance they've lost to the car ahead. It's gone from a 3-way fight to just 2 of them, and the car that they were battling has cleared off down the road.
There is some there's some sense in working together as drivers, and I feel like despite the different camps that we've got here, sometimes you've just got to down tools and focus on working your way back up again, because the Wildcats are just being handed this position right now. We were talking earlier about they seem to crack a little bit under pressure. When the pressure's not there, there's really nothing to worry about. Again, it's not a case of looking in your rearview mirrors. It's a case of looking on ahead, getting the laps in. 3 seconds off the next people up the road are Wildcats, so more positions potentially on a plate for them. So Tyre Wall are leaders from Williams and Baguette. Kitty Crew rounding out the top 4. And for Tyre Wall, it's looking increasingly good. 25 laps out of 95 completed.
Yeah, so just over a quarter of the way through, it seems like it's whizzed by to me. Obviously, these guys, I'm sure, when they're driving, wishing, especially if they're Tyre, will wish it would go a little bit quicker, I'm sure, with them leading the race. But they're doing a superb job so far. So we saw them batting a lot with Baguette Racing earlier on, but that battle seems to have subsided for now at least. And once again, like similar races, the battling now turns to the midfield, which it's great. They're racing just as hard as the guys would be if it was for first place, and that's what we like to see. Battling up and down the grid, just even for personal pride at this stage.
So a brief reminder of the point situation going into race number 3. MAD with a 5-point lead over Baguette and Kitty Crew. 12 points for first if you're just joining us, all the way down to 1 point for the final finisher. As things stand, we have Baguette and Kitty Crew in 3rd and 4th. MAD down to 8th. Now that's not worst case scenario, of course, but you can definitely tell that this is one they might just have to write off.
It is, but it's a shame for them because it's not by appearance a car limitation or anything. No, they've not gone for a car choice that saves them a bit of money in the overall process. So I think it might just be a category issue for them, which is a problem because they're going to have to use this car twice, if I'm not mistaken. So it's one of them where if they've done it that way, as there's a mistake there for the Baguette Racing car, again just clipping the grass through the middle of Magnus and Beckers. We see lots of cars doing that. It's such a high-speed corner, you've really got to commit to it, and because it's so high-speed, you make just the slightest of mistakes, you get punished. So they'll have to try and cut out, but it explains why they've fallen away from what we saw earlier, which was them battling for the lead.
I believe we have seen a driver change as well for Baguette Racing. Christopher Cabrera now in the Baguette Racing car. He was Arnoux previously. And so, again, wish we could go back in time, have a look at what happened exactly. But something has gone awry, and whether that's a new car or a new car getting into the guy, a new guy getting into the car, or whether it's just a case of Tyre Wall and Williams showing more pace at this point in the race. They're still on the podium, but when you taste the lead, it's all that more annoying once you've lost it. And I fear for Baguette a little bit here, Harry, because as soon as you get into a cycle of thinking, oh, well, we were unlucky in race number 2. Oh, well, we were unlucky in race number 3. It really tests the characters of some of these people. And again, regardless of whether it's real or virtual racing, they're still humans at heart, and they're competitive humans at that.
Absolutely, and I reckon they're probably quite lucky that it's happening this early in the event and not maybe, let's say, 4 a.m. where tempers might be a little more frayed, obviously, as the night goes on and the racing continues. And these guys don't get much of a break at all. So we'll see how they cope with the disaster, well, not disaster, the compromise of race 2 and what looks like a compromise of race 3.
All right, well, currently embroiled in battle is the Mighty 38 team, and Bryn's gone down to have a little chat with them.
I thought I'd run down here and have a quick chat to the team because, as you were saying in the commentary just a few moments ago, really, that you got MAD, or MAD, as they're called, MAD Motorsport, and you got Wildcats, and you've got between them sandwiched is Mighty 38, and rather than working together to get up the track a little bit, they're kind of fighting each other. And I wanted to speak to the team and see what their thoughts are on that. So, David, out on track, it's very hard because you're fighting for places, but when you're so early in the race, and we're not even third distance just yet, is there maybe a way of going where you speak to the other teams and say, rather than fighting each other, let's just draft and try and get further up the track?
So you'll be seeing that throughout the race because these cars have a ton of downforce. So if you go into a hard braking zone and you get the draft wash from the car in front of you, it'll really just kind of take you off the track. So people are just kind of keeping their space, getting a gauge for their pace, and then just seeing what kind of moves they can make later on in the race when it comes time to do it.
Right, okay. I was wondering, thank you very much, David. Get back to your food. I know it's very important to eat. I was wondering if there could be a kind of a cycling peloton type thing where the back moves to the front and drags them along a bit and carries on going, just to get them further up the grey stuff. But that's not happening. We'll see if it happens later on. James.
Thank you very much, Brent. And currently in P7 and lie Mighty 38. And as we edge closer to lap 30, third of the way through, our way through, whatever way you want to put it. As spaced out as some of these battles are, I'll be honest with you, Harry, I don't see anything which is disappointing in a way, because they're all still actually quite close enough where the strategy can still have an impact and bring those battles back together again. And certainly we saw that through race number 2. Pack split up as soon as the pit stop phase ends. They're all brought back together again. And so I feel like this part of the race now, this second hour that we're going into, arguably going to be the most crucial, where you're eking out as much of an advantage for yourself as possible. And for Williams here, I don't know. I've been disappointed. I've been impressed. Both days, in qualifying and so far here on race day. Coyne remains in the car, the self-confessed night owl. 1.6 seconds behind. Do you keep this distance, or do you push to take the lead now? Because on the one side, yes, you want to keep your consistent pace. It means you're going to be staying on time for strategy call, for pit stops, whatever. At the same time, Tyrwall have lost the lead already this race. They've been gifted it back, it seems. Why not put them under further pressure and multiply your gains?
Absolutely, you're right. In terms of what Coyne needs to do in that second place, and basically drive to what he's comfortable to do. I wouldn't worry about the gap in front. It's basically drive how you want to drive and how you're comfortable to drive. And if that gap starts coming down and you fancy making the move, you can go for it. If you want to rein it in a little bit to be a bit more comfortable in the car, he can keep that gap knowing he's got that extra pace in his pocket if he wants to use it at any point. But it would probably be interesting from his point to see if he's not already on the limit, what sort of time gain he can expect by pushing the boundaries a little bit of his ability, if he's not already at that stage, because they've done a superb job to bring themselves earlier. It was all about Tyrwell Racing and Baguette Racing, and then we enter, like you say, coming up to the second hour, and all of a sudden it's Tyrwell Racing still leading, and then Williams are now emerging as a challenger to them. So it's interesting how it develops, and let's not forget Baguette Racing. They're still in third, within 4 seconds, so they're still there or thereabouts. And they can still fight from that position with ease.
Well, the Cats may be wild, but you'd be forgiven for thinking that they've been shot in the tyre or something, because they keep on falling back into the hands of people who are just fighting amongst themselves and looking to make progress selfishly without considering their own position. Tyrwell leads by 1.1 seconds, and so as much as that battle back in the midfield is of interest, Williams are closing. They are looking to push the initiative. Under a second now. Battle will be joined soon, but battle has been ended here. The Wildcats, I think, a mistake. That looked far too easy for my liking, and Mighty 38 are, not for the first time this race, back past them. So big shout out to our friends at SMP Racing. A wonderful opportunity there to get involved with an esport team. I've been involved with an esport team. Lots of fun. More on the marketing side than the driving side, but definitely go and check them out. There's plenty of time to over the next 24 hours, of course, but right now, our eyes are fixated on what could become a very juicy battle indeed for the lead. In fact, let's call it now. It is a very juicy battle for the lead. Tyrwell, who have led comfortably for the last 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes or so, finally under pressure once again, and it is Williams Esports applying said pressure. Coin, the Williams team, they want their first win of the evening, and why not do it at their home race in Silverstone? Oh, not like that though. Going Japanese drifting style around Luffield there. They won't want to be doing that. They want to be doing more of what they were doing beforehand.
Absolutely, that won't do their tyres any good, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I say, whilst these two now close up to each other, we're potentially going to have the battle going on. Baguette Racing, I'm sure, going to start seeing them start edging closer to them as they drive around the racetrack, as they gain on them. It's one of them things that Williams have got to take into account. If they start battling and it doesn't go to plan, they overtake and they drive off, great. Although, again, more mistakes creeping into the driving for both of these guys. But yeah, for Williams, if they want to make the move, they've got to make it quick and then get away. If they try and make the move and then get caught battling, that's going to invite Baguette Racing back into it, and then you've got a three-way scrap where things get really complicated.
Martin Pilkington has done himself proud in this first third of the race. That much can be absolutely confirmed. There's no taking that away from him. He goes from hero to legend if he keeps the car where it is now. It's and a shout out to everyone actually in the studio as well. The actual atmosphere here has been wonderful. You can sense the camaraderie in the teams. It's been great to see so many people popping in, checking us out. And if you are here at Le Mans, actually, please do come and check us out in the fan zone. That's our plug. Done, nice and easy. Big shout out to our sponsors as well. Playseat Thrustmaster providing the wheels, providing the play seats, of course. It's a wonderful event, and there is still plenty more to come. As we have an off here, and is that a tyre wall off? I don't think it is. I think it's the Williams behind. Yes, it is, because look at that time. It has doubled in length, and tyre wall, you know what? They are just being given opportunity after opportunity to just stay calm, keep clear heads, and move on forward, because Williams, they had the opportunity to make something happen and they've spurned it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that we were talking about it a few minutes ago, though. Williams, if they want to put the pressure on and close the gap up, then they can do. They did that, but then the mistakes have crept in. It's all about that balance of not just driving flat out, because you're always closer to the edge and closer to committing to a mistake, and you can't afford to do that. You know, they're getting away with it for now, but it only takes one of those to go horribly wrong, and it's race over potentially. So no, they can't afford to just sit there in second, of course. No, as a former racing driver, or esports driver myself, it's a case of you want to be progressing forward all the time. You want to be catching the car ahead. You want to be trying to overtake and make positions. You don't like sitting where you are, especially if it's in second behind the race leader. But you can't risk the car, especially in a team event like this. It's massive, to be able to take care of each other and drive for each other as well as yourself. But they're reading that tyre wall car back in again. So hopefully that will be rejoined shortly.
You've got to wonder if there is a pressure. Williams Esports, they are prevalent in a number of different racing series, certainly. We're back to where the pressure is most certainly real. This is the pressure cooker at the moment, I would say. Wildcats, for once, on the attack. They must be delighted. And I believe that's a lapped car there, so we don't really have to worry about that too much. But the Wildcats, after being on the defense for so much of this race, finally have something to both figuratively and literally look forward to. CMP up ahead. A reminder that Jacob Boquet here, with a broken arm, so doing incredibly well to put on the pace that he is. I mean, at the pace they are going, P5 is there for the taking, but CMP, they've been here before. They've already scored well, of course, with 8 points in race number 1. And so for their sakes, I don't think that this defence is going to be a light one.
Absolutely not. It's worth fighting for that's for sure. And last time we saw the Wildcats car, they were battling with MAD and trying to work their way through that group of cars they were in. They've done that. They've made the breakaway and they've latched onto the back of the CMP car in 5th place. Now, they know what it's known. They've been in battles around this racetrack throughout the last 30-odd laps, so they've got the experience of trying to make a move and where to do it, as we've got another round of pit stops coming in right on cue.
It kind of reminds me of, it's almost like, almost like a roller coaster when you have all the carts coming in at the same time because they're all locked together. It feels a little bit like that. It's a procession into the pits. as everyone makes their third round of stops. I feel at this stage, certainly, especially looking at the likes of Veloci, the Audis, they sadly look a little bit underhanded. That much is being confirmed to us. Out of the pits, and it is tyre wall still ahead, but Williams have closed up once again, and so the pit stop's throwing yet another twist into the tail. Williams made a mistake just 2-3 minutes ago. Now they have got their best opportunity yet.
It's that crazy phase of the race again where they come out of the pit lane and they're on cold tyres, and you see all sorts of weird lines going on and lockups and spinning the wheels on acceleration. But in all of that, we've still got these two cars. They say Williams catching that gap back up through the pit stop phase, which will please them. We don't know if they've done a driver changes yet. We'll check that out in just a moment. But they're still in prime position and they look hungry to just take the lead and try and drive away. They closed the gap up over the last stint as they run wide there. But they closed the gap up. They've obviously got the pace. They just need the clear track to try and do it. But sometimes pace isn't enough to get you past. You've got to be brave with overtakes, and I'm sure that is going to be a firm defence as well by Tyrrell, as they've had experience from the beginning part of the race. They're getting experience in attacking and defending, so it's getting harder to make overtakes, that's for sure.
Looks like Wildcats have made their way through, and despite the best efforts of Renan Negrini here, it's onwards and upwards for the Wildcats. A little bit of a mistake there on the exit of Beckett's, but the CMP car struggling out of the pits. And so, again, going back to your point, it's a crazy time in the race. You've got to warm up your tyres, and simply put, Wildcats doing a better job of it than all the other cars around them. And slowly but surely, after an uncertain start, they're moving their way back up the order and manoeuvring themselves into a very nice position indeed to score some solid points here. The top four is still as you were, however. It is still Tyrrell, leading from Williams, Baguette in third, and Kitty Crew in fourth. And Kitty Crew, I feel they had that brilliant stint in the opening 20 laps, and then they've kind of just fallen away. They've plateaued.
Yeah, it's one of them situations where they might have pushed really hard early on, got themselves into a position where they're comfortable. They can just take a bit of time to relax a little behind the wheel, because if you're constantly driving on edge and full of pressure that you need to constantly make progress, that's when the mistakes start creeping in. So it might just be a lull in the race for them to try and get things back on track, make sure they're running smoothly, and then go again, hopefully, for our sake and everyone's watching's sake, to give us some good entertainment once again, because they have been on fire this race.
Poor SMP Racing and Advocatus Diaboli really suffering in this one. 2 laps down the Russian outfit, 1 lap down the Chinese outfit. Simple coming into the pits and coming back into the fight for the lead is Williams, is Michael Coyne. Who would have thought in the Le Mans Esports series that in Silverstone we'd have a battle of the Brits for the first place? Of course, Martin Pilkington still doing an excellent job up there. But Coyne smells blood, and the pit stop has offered him a chance to lead the pack into maybe trying to overhaul what has been a spirited, wonderful performance so far into the arena section. It's a tight line from Martin Pilkington, but he wraps it up nicely. And as long as he gets a decent exit here, then he should be able to fend off the Williams down the straight. He looked a little bit slidey on exit there from Coyne. So heading towards Brooklands, Luffield, Woodcote. It should be yet another sector survived for our leaders. And you know what? I feel that the promising thing here for me, Harry, is it doesn't feel to me like a matter of when rather than if. It really does feel like an if situation, because although Williams have stayed close, they've not really asked any questions yet either.
No, absolutely. So we've seen they've got the ultimate pace by closing the gap in the first place, but the defending driver from the lead car Tyrrell is impressive to say the least, and they're under pressure pretty much at every point around the track. They're coming under pressure on different laps, of course, but every time you get to a corner you're wondering if a move's going to come to fruition. But they're doing a great defensive job, and they're going to really need to coming down into Stoke Corner. But again, the Williams team can't make a move on this occasion.
We've been treated to some wonderful racing so far, and this is a very different type of wonderful racing. We've seen some amazing overtakes. this is just pure skill from both of these drivers. You can tell that they are not saving tires, they're not saving fuel. They are going as fast as they can muster, and it is wonderful to see, especially around this circuit. It's a reminder, of course, that Martin Pilkington usually plays the role of caster, and so showing that he is no slouch. But in the background, is that P3 Baguette Racing I spot? I think it is. We might have a 3-horse race here, but before that, Williams have spotted Baguette Racing in their rearview mirrors as well, and all of a sudden they're thinking, oh goodness me, we're going to be fighting in front of us and behind us if we don't get a wiggle on. Once again though, the braking into Brooklands, I think that is where a lot of this time is being gained, Harry. Williams can't launch it because they know that Tirewall have the upper one.
Exactly. No, great defensive driving, covering the inside late on the brakes, but all the time they're doing this, as you said, Baguette Racing coming into play as well within maybe the next couple of laps, and behind that even it's only 3 seconds back to Kitty Crew as well in 4th. Before long we could have 4 cars fighting for the lead if Williams don't make the pass soon, because I'm sure they're hoping to be able to drive away, because they're right, both these guys right on edge. Baguette Racing obviously on edge as well because they're flying through and catching up, and we can see the Williams car trying to get the slingshot out of Maggots and Beckett's down this hangar straight, and the lead car just trying to break the toe, trying to stop the run into Stowe Corner to prevent any outbraking, and that's going to do it because they're not close enough to make that kind of move. Obviously just trying to scare them off the racing line, trying to, like, if they do that and in the rearview mirror they see, as we need to watch out for the lapped car by the looks of things, which gets out of the way in time, but they make it through unscathed, which is great. But yeah, every time they do that late braking lunge up the inside, not committing to a move but just showing the nose, it puts that little bit of doubt in the Tirewall Racing car, and they have to worry about whether they need to leave space or not. And by doing that, it's going to potentially force an error, so we'll see.
Back markers getting involved, but thankfully not too much. But there's Baguette Racing, very happy to get involved themselves. They've been biding their time ever since losing the lead, and it looks like they're back with a vengeance. 3 cars separated by 1 second, and they're all battling for money, dollars on the line, 1,000 with each step. Tirewall leading from Williams, a little bit of an opening there from the Williams car. Baguette doesn't bite, and is this Kitty Crew as well? I think this is Kitty Crew as well. We could have 4 potential cars in the battle for first. Incredible stuff here as we near the halfway point in this 3-hour race. Williams, once again, looking to put the foot down. We're looking back at Baguette Racing, just how close they've gotten now. And I'm feeling that setup might have a major part to play in this as well, because Williams, they look so strong through these fast corners, but they've been unable to capitalize on the straights. Speaking of the hangar straight, for the 38th time of asking, but still no question from Williams. And now they are in real trouble because Baguette have led this race already. We know they can overtake, and it looks like they're setting up 4-1. They were just having a little look on the inside there of Club, not pushing the issue just yet. But goodness me, we are in for a bit of a treat, I feel.
Absolutely. The problem with Williams got is they've lost the luxury of being able to drive whatever line they want to try and make the move. They've got to worry about the car behind as well. So it's almost forming a bit of a train at this stage. And all 4 cars, top 4, line astern after 38 laps. That's brilliant.
And keep this in mind as well. Important to note that we just saw there on our graphics. Kitty Crew with the fastest lap of the race. So in theory, the fastest of these cars is the one in 4th. Williams lining up once again, but unable once again to make pain on the straights. They've been able to pull out a little bit from Baguette's Kitty Crew there, 4-wheel drifting through Brooklands. That pace that we were questioning, I feel like they were listening to us, Harry. I feel like they were listening to the challenge of, oh, where's your pace gone? They're showing it once again, applying it at the right time. Almost lap 40 of 95. And honestly, it is anybody's guess as to which of these 4 cars is going to be walking away with the $3,000 on offer from race number 3.
Hi there. Well, as you're watching that battle with Tirewall Racing, I thought I'd come over and catch up with John. Aaron working very, very hard in the seat behind. But you're going to be going in the car in a bit, not just yet.
Yeah, so I'm going to be going in this car pretty soon. Actually, I'm pretty nervous at the moment because Aaron's doing such a great job holding off 3 guys right now, actually. And just thinking about going into that four-way battle that he has made is just scary, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking behind, well, you've got there's 3-4 cars chasing you down. Aaron having to work very hard. And you're, I suppose, just going to hope Aaron can keep you in first place, maintain it, then you get in, and then all you've got to do is bring it home in what? I don't know how many laps you're going to be running for. You run for 35 laps, something like that?
I'm probably going to be running about 35 laps, 34, I think, after our driver switch. And as you exactly said, it's just my only job is to bring the car home, stay in first place, and not crash.
It's easy, right?
Sure.
Well, best of luck there. It's confident. Actually, before we disappear straight back to the commentators, I was talking to John. They've got this very interesting pit system that I thought I'd show you while we still can. So if you just have a quick look at that shot there. I want to know what the numbers meant. There's a 540. There are other numbers on them as well. There's a 720. What does this actually mean?
So these are our wheel rotation settings that we have to change in the pits when the driver changes. So all three of us are using identical wheel settings, except for our wheel rotation setting, which is amount of degrees you have to rotate your wheel to get a full lock. Since the driver has headphones on and they can't hear us, we thought we could just make a card and show it to them as a way of communicating that we have to change our settings in the pits. So we have 3 settings for me, Melish, and Goki. So those are what the 3 cards are for.
So is it the person that's driving into the pits that changes that, or is it the person getting into the seat?
These are the person getting in that changes it, but sometimes we improvise, and if the pit stops short, then the person who's getting out, just before he gets out, he changes settings and then lets the other guy get in the seats.
Very complicated stuff. John, I'll let you rest, because you're going to be getting in there soon. I've got a feeling you're going to need all of your focus.
Yes, probably.
Thank you very much indeed. So we'll carry on watching this battle. Back to James and back to Harry.
Love it. Who says there isn't strategy in sim racing? Absolutely no one, that's who. And that's a brilliant bit of ingenuity from the team that's currently leading this race. And, well, we have a little message from Race Control warning Williams Esports about exceeding track limits. Now, that could be worrying given the roaring horses that are stampeding up towards them behind. Kitty Crew looking to go around the outside of Maggots. Surely not. No, Baguette are going to close the door before that opens up into another Pandora's box. But Williams, they've been warned, Harry. That pace, keeping close to the leaders, falsified.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for them. Obviously, we've still got this battle raging on. Baguette trying their best to defend, but I don't think they're going to be able to defend for any longer unless they get the undercut, which they do. Brilliant driving to get, to spot the move coming in, and then to be able to get the switch back to regain that third place. Obviously, a good attempt of a move from the Kitty Crew car, but Baguette Racing saw it coming and reacted accordingly. But a worry for Williams with those track limits. We're not even halfway through yet, which is a joy to us, probably not for time, well, I imagine, to know they're not even halfway through yet with all this fantastic racing going on. But they need to keep on top of that. They're only going to get so many warnings before they don't get any more warnings. They get told that's enough, and they have to serve a stop-go, which will ruin their race completely. But at the moment, these 4 guys are providing a fantastic show.
Battling, holding up. Third and fourth, just a little smidgen. Just a little smidgen. To be fair, that's about the gap now between Williams and Tirewall once again. Hopefully keeping it between the white lines and the curbing Williams. Just a fast, it's almost like a pendulum, this one. Swinging one way and the next. One moment we've got these 2 split off in pairs, the other there. As close as any race I've certainly commentated on, that's for sure. On board currently with Williams, though, we can see that Tirewall just starting to pull a bit of an advantage once again. And that advantage that we saw from Williams in the second sector, I think that's maybe where they were extending track limits a little bit too much, because certainly they seem to have lost a bit of pace through there. I mean, it could be through tyre wear, of course, as well. Looking further back to Kitty Crew, a look on the outside, a look on the inside, a dive on the inside, maybe a dive on the inside. They put their nose in, maybe where it doesn't belong. Off track goes Baguette. but also ahead were Baguette. I think they stay there on merit, but Kitty Crew have sensed an opportunity, they've pounced. But they don't come out with their prey, although a little bit wide go Baguette through Club. They've had to give the room to Kitty Crew, who forced their way through. I say that was a fair move, honestly. Through into turn 1, that's move confirmed, and Kitty Crew are up onto the podium.
Beautiful move, they set that one up, forced the aero, got the nose up the inside into the final complex of corners, and then by doing that, forcing, although Baguette is coming back, trying to push their way through, but you can see they backed off because they knew that wasn't going to be a fair move, so credit where it's due there. They tried it, it wasn't going to work. But yeah, going back to that original move by Kitty Crew to get up into third, they forced Baguette to go wide, and then they couldn't get the rotation on the car, went out wide, lost momentum, and by doing the switch back, they got it done, going into turn 1.
And so, not for the first time in the last 3 hours, Baguette, after finding themselves in the money, find themselves staring at odd pictures. Out of the money, but not out of hope. Certainly, I would hope. They can still see the podium ahead of them, and there are still over 45 laps of this contest still to be driven. For the Audis, it's a sad picture. They were hoping on utilising less pit stops to be able to keep up with this fight, but I mean, this top 4, the pace that they're showing kind of outweighs any sort of strategical call. They've just been sensational for them.
It is, and they've been battling for the last at least half a dozen laps, if not longer, and yet they're still maintaining such a rampant speed compared to the guys outside of the top 4. It's really impressive to see them be able to keep up that level of lap time whilst battling with each other. Although it looks like Baguette Racing becoming a bit disjointed after being passed. So we saw them close that gap up when Williams and Tywall were battling, but now that seems to have stopped a little bit and they're just driving lap times. They seem to have fallen away again, so it's a bit of a disappointment for them at the moment.
And still, through all of this, however, Tywall still able to hold on to the lead. And again, I re-emphasize, I don't think this is because everyone behind is battling. I think that pace is 100% genuine. And I mean, if you're Michael Coyne at this point, staring at that rear wing for what is it now, 15 to 20 laps or something, you can argue that surely it's Tywall with the advantage in the sense of they've been able to keep them behind for 20 laps. What's not to say that they can't keep them behind for 20 laps more? Williams are possibly more susceptible to a mistake at this point out of red mist descending than Tywall are because of the pressure.
Yeah, they'll be very happy with their defensive job so far, being under so much pressure for such a long time and being able to resist it. It's going to give them confidence moving forward in the race. But to be honest with Williams Esports, they make a small mistake there, which gives a run to Kitty Crew Racing. We'll see if anything comes of this as they run down to Stoke Corner, but I don't think the slipstream is going to be quite enough. Because obviously Williams has still got a slipstream from the car ahead. It's going to be very difficult to make a move, but they seem just to have extra speed in this Kitty Crew car. They're all coming into the pit lane, so we'll see if anything changes in the pit lane. Because obviously we've seen things change before in the pit sequence. So whether it's a case of if you're further down the pit lane, you get held up, perhaps as you have to give way to the car coming down the pit lane that's already made it stop. So we'll try and see if anything changes as they exit. Because obviously we've got the cold tyre sequence to go again of the first few corners, which always throws a bit of spice into the mix.
They were nose to tail on entry. What is the situation going to be on exit? Everyone looks to be nose to tail once again, and it looks to be Tywall out in front once again. Williams behind. Kitty Crew even closer than before, gained a lot of time on pit entry. My goodness, you can see they're learning from the mistakes of everyone around them, but Kitty Crew, they want to force the mistakes, and they're taking the initiative up the inside on the exit of the arena section. They forced Williams out wide, and it's this persistence. They went over the line once before, Kitty Crew. They're not looking to do it again. Up the inside of Brooklands, they're side by side with Williams. Williams going to have the inside of Luffield now. Kitty Crew looking to go all the way around the outside of the corner. You're going to need hella speed for that one, and although they have hella speed in certain sections, they don't have it there. Still persistently looking for various kinks in the armour of this Williams defence, and for Tywall, they're looking behind and they're laughing with glee because That is a battle that they really, for the moment, don't have to worry about.
They don't, but they'll be surely worried if that Kitty Crew car passes the Williams car, because it's on a rampage still. We keep saying it, but they are probably the fastest car out of these three, I reckon, on Ultimate Lap, as they look to try and squeeze through a gap on the inside. They can't make it up there, though, and they'll have to try and go around the outside of Stowe Corner. With the Williams cars defending, they're still on the outside. Ribbon's been left. Now have the inside for the final few corners, and they get that move done. So Kitty Crew moving up to second. Make sure Williams try and get an undercut to get that second place back, but they can't. Kitty Crew up to second, and now they can start the charge to take the fight to Tyrewall as well.
Well, full points in terms of stylish overtakes goes to Kitty Crew for this round. What a manoeuvre around the outside of Stowe as well. And now I am fearful for Tyrewall's lead, because Williams, they were on the waiting list and eventually they just decided to sign themselves off it. Kitty Crew, we know they're the fastest car in the race. The best lap says they are. This is the biggest challenge that Tyrewall have had all race, and it comes as we are just shy of the halfway mark.
Absolutely. Kitty Crew showing a great diversity in ability to overtake pretty much anywhere they want to overtake. So we've seen Tyrewall doing well to defend inside lines, but Kitty Crew have shown that they've got more than trying to overtake up the inside. If you defend, Tyrewall try and defend the inside, they've shown they can just drive around the outside at Stowe, which is no mean feat. So impressive stuff. We see they're breaking away a little bit already from the Williams car, but obviously as soon as they start battling, they're probably going to fall back into their clutches. It's depending on how fast how fast and if Kitty Crew can make that pass. And obviously Baguette Racing still lingering in the background. You can see them there coming through shot. They're still just watching on. So if we get some more fighting, they might find themselves back in the fray.
Well, look, Kitty Crew are already knocking on the door. It's like a SWAT team just waiting to let itself in and bring the house down all around Tyrewall. Big fan of the team. Delighted to see them doing well in this particular round, especially at Martin Pilkington's home track of all places. But the Kitty Crew have got their claws out. Lap 47. Look at this, immediately looking to take the outside line into the arena, looking to go all the way around the outside of turn 3 and went deep into turn 4, somewhat tactically. Tyrewall had to check up, and are they still in the lead? No, they aren't. Are they? I don't know. I think they're side by side. No, Tyrewall have been able to keep ahead, performing the undercut, so it was Kitty Crew going too deep rather than a tactical going too deep into the corner. It was a mistake, and that's invited Williams back in. This lead battle does not want to settle. Tyrewall will not relinquish first.
They won't. So it'd be very easy for them to just go, no, you can go through and I'll follow you through, but they want to hold on to that lead. They want to keep track position, and why not? No, they're showing a great defensive muscle. They've got a poor runner there. Kitty Crew trying to go side by side through Baggers Beckers. I wouldn't put it past them to be able to make it stick, but they can't on this occasion. Now Williams with the run on the Kitty Crew car going around the outside as well, but I think that's going to be defended, so they stay as they were as they head down the hanger straight towards Stowe once more.
It was just a catalyst of Tyrewall going in too slow, and very interesting here, weaving from the Kitty Crew to warm tyres, maybe, as a signal to another driver, maybe. Once again weaving, going to the outside of club, Kitty Crew turns in, Tyrewall covering off the curbing beautifully, and look at, even all the way back to Baguette Racing back in fourth, they've all congested up once again, and Tyrewall's pace, albeit just about, is enough to keep them ahead.
The problem they've got is that they are ultimately fast, but they can't drive to that pace because they've got to take defensive lines. They've got to compromise lap time to hold on to position. That's what's causing this four-way battle for the lead, and it's incredible to see. It's difficult for them to make an overtake. We keep seeing it. The defensive driving is great. Overtaking attempts are good, but the defensive driving has been top-notch so far.
So through into Brooklands and Luffield. It's a middling line from Martin Pilkington. Quite frankly, I'd say that the middling line is probably the one that you'd want to take, though. Make the guys behind you question whether you're going to defend, whether you're looking for the optimal line. Onto the old home straight, moving up towards Copse. And this camera, I think, is so telling Nyman wants to go so much quicker through there than he's allowed to. But he's got to check up because of the tyre wall pace. Williams, once again, looking interested as we move through Maggots and Beckett's. Baguette, almost like a crow watching on below him. All of these things happening in front. So many little bits of jewellery that he can pick up potentially once all of this battling has subsided. If it will subside, it's been going on for the last 10-15 minutes, of course. Kitty Crew, bit of a mistake on exit from tyre wall. Will Kitty Crew brake late to look around the outside? They will brake late, but they won't be able to go around the outside because once again, the lines from Martin Pilkington have been supreme. There's simply no way through.
Absolutely. This is an absolute masterclass in defensive driving technique by Aaron. He's showing us how to do it. There's cars behind him which ultimately look to be faster, and yet he's able to fend them off. And by going to the outside, Kitty Crew now opening a door to Williams as they try and go through, but they're now having to fight Baguette to try and get track position. It's so complicated for them to try and make a move because they've got to defend at the same time. They're trying to overtake, but the car behind is putting themselves in a position which doesn't allow them to overtake. It's so difficult for them, but I reckon the most difficult job is for Tyrell at the moment, having to try and defend against all of that.
Whoa, and there's contact between Williams and Kitty Crew. Kitty Crew saves it, Williams doesn't. And you know what? For so long we were asking, when are Williams going to send it? When are they going to have the confidence to dive down the inside of there? They had the confidence there, but it was misplaced. Baguette through into third. Williams find themselves reeling off the podium, and Kitty Crew are wiping sweat off their brow because that incident could have taken them out as well as Williams.
I reckon that's because of the four-way battle. I think that's maybe more of a little bit of a mistake from the Williams car, of possibly trying to outbrake and defend from the Baguette Racing car and getting caught out by the checking up of the cars in front. Obviously, thankfully, it hasn't wrecked any of their races. Williams down to fourth. Kitty Crew can still continue in second, thankfully. But they're still in amongst each other, so that might even just be a bit of a warm-up. Who knows?
So, I guess we're going to be nearing another pit stop phase in the next 5 laps or so. Kitty Crew seemingly undisturbed by the end of this lap, considering the slight scare that they've just been through. Williams still in sight of the podium. Of course, remember, they've just gone from $2,000 to nothing for this race. And up the inside, an opportunity once again presented by Tyrell. Kitty Crew. It's Nyman around the outside. He's got a good exit. He's got a really good exit. Is he going to go fully around the outside? Out to the arena section. He's going to hold it there. Tyre wall, though. They've got the inside line into Brooklands. Are they going to brake later? It's what's gained them so much time so far this race. They've done it again, and they've defended again. This is an inspired drive. Through Brooklands and up into Woodcote. Baguette in third can only look on ahead. Their pace, it's plateaued. It's not able to keep on the same lines as this front two. Heading through Copse now, traffic up ahead. Is this going to impact the race an awful lot? Good back marking, out the way. Excellent work there. And into Maggots and Beckett's. It's line astern, tyre wall from Kitty Crew. Baguette closing up, Williams closing up. Onto the hanger straight, and that's a great exit from Kitty Crew. Look at that, once again, tyre wall. Martin Pilkington going to the middle of the road, but Kitty Crew, Daniel Nyman, he was looking to commit, but he couldn't once again. A tyre wall, always a bit slow through Stowe, but still they can't find a way past this Brit.
No, he's putting his car in the perfect position for every corner. He's making it so he's got a little bit of room for himself to maybe run away from the apex, but doesn't leave a car width of space. So Kitty Crew can't commit to the inside, and they're not going to be able to go the really long way around. So it's perfect defensive driving so far, but I don't think he's going to be best pleased if he finds out he's only just after halfway through this race. It must feel like it's been taking an eternity for him, but so far he's been faultless, so let's hope he can keep it up.
The light is at the end of the tunnel, and the light will get brighter and brighter as the minutes tick on down. Once again, Baguette, because of this battle, they've been drawn back in. Williams keeping watching brief. I'm sure their tyres will have been awfully, awfully damaged there in that half spin. It looked like they didn't lose it too much. And going wide there again, that is almost a telltale sign of bad tyre wear. And for tyre wall have been doing amazingly so far. Aaron Martin Pilkington, hats off to you. But if I'm in that cockpit, I'm thinking, I could really do with Baguette really helping me out here. Kitty Crew to the outside of Maggots has to pull in once again. It's nip and tuck. They find bits here and there where they're able to find a better exit, but when they're lining up a move for the next corner, they've still not been able to do enough. That said, this exit off Chapel, looking particularly good for Dan Nyman. Is he going to send it up the inside? Is this the change of the lead? Potentially up the inside of Stowe, and on exit he's finally through. The defense is broken, and his Kitty Crew into the lead of this 3 hours of Silverstone.
Beautiful move. He worked it through Maggots and Beckett's to try and get the run down the hanger straight. He judged it perfectly. Interestingly, that Aaron didn't decide to defend the inside into Stowe. He left it open, and the Kitty Crew went straight into it, and they find themselves in the lead. And Baguette Racing now looking to try and capitalise on that change of position too.
And we've got to watch out for Baguette now. The domino has fallen. He doesn't want the trail to start falling behind him as well. That's a deep line into the arena section. I don't know why he did that. Yeah, maybe he was thinking that Baguette was going to launch an attack around the outside. Either way, it doesn't seem like he's been affected too much by it. And for now, currently in the Baguette car, by the way, still Christopher Cabrera remains behind. Luffield still line astern. Where's Williams in all this? Have they remained about a second back? They do remain a little bit detached from this top three. But surely now that they're in the lead, and we know how much potential Nyman has in this middle sector, surely it's a case of pulling out as much time as possible. Then again, we said the same of Baguette Racing in the early stages of this race, and Tirewall still kept them honest as they went super slow on the exit of Maggots. Baguette Racing, Christopher Cabrera, what reactions that was to avoid what could have taken both second and third off the racetrack and into the gravel.
Absolutely, it was such an unexpected thing to be trying to break, or having to break that hard in the middle of Maggots and Beckett's, but he's alert. Now, these guys are at the top level, so when that kind of thing unexpectedly happens, they're on top of it. So they managed to avoid what could have been a massive collision, maybe a little bit more contact there into the final section. We get a pretty good view of that car in front, we must admit, as we head onto another lap now, heading into turn one. So a little bit of frustration maybe from Baguette, sort of weaving. Oh! More contact into turn one as Tyrell, for some reason, surprisingly slow through there by the looks of things. I wonder if they've got damage, which is causing it. As we're hearing, the Williams that was in this battle, was in fourth place, has gone off the track, as well as the Tyrell car runs wide and loses second place as well. So I'm fearing they've got damage from the contact that we've seen over the last half a lap or so. They're still there or thereabouts, but we've seen perfect defensive driving from that Tyrell car. And all of a sudden, we've seen a few issues in the matter of a few corners, so I'm wondering if damage is involved. But let's not forget, while this is happening, Kitty Crew in first place, they've taken off down the road. They're looking strong at this point.
They have profited where Williams haven't, and the problems have only gotten worse for Williams. Confirm they've not lost position, but they have lost 8 seconds to the podium. It was such an exciting battle, wasn't it? Because we knew that one of those guys wasn't going to be picking up money in this race. And unless there is a miracle at this point, I'd say that Williams is possibly the identity of that car now.
Well, this is where we see what the Williams team is made of. They've lost a lot of ground, and basically they've got two options. They either get their heads down and drive the most perfect race from this point, bring themselves back into contention, or they look at it and go, we've messed it up. And then they get themselves a bit down and they can't bridge that gap again. But it's another factor to look into. We know all 4 of those cars have got absolutely rapid pace, and it's whether any of them can come back together. If any of them can catch Kitty Crew, have taken off, as we say, 3 seconds the lead now to Baguette, who only a matter of laps ago had fallen off the back of the top trio. They now find themselves in second place, as we've got some cars ahead that are getting out of the way nicely, the back markers. That's all good to see. But disappointing for Williams. It looks like they had an accident by themselves. Out of all the action we've seen and battling we've seen and overtaking and defending, it's their own error that's cost them by the looks of things. So we don't think anyone else is involved at this stage that we know of, but it's a shame for them. But we'll see what they're made of. Still a very long way to go, really, just after half distance, really. So,
and it's not exactly that they're going home with nothing. They've already banked themselves 2,000k. Going off the track there, I think, was one of the back markers. Quite incredible, actually, that we have 3 cars now lapped, 2 of them by 2 laps. So ferocious has been the pace around this Silverstone circuit. A reminder that rounding out the top 5 as well, Wildcats. After that brilliant middle stint, they've been able to really hook onto that position. Where are they in comparison to Williams now? So Williams are 11 seconds off the lead. Wildcats only 5 seconds behind them, actually. 16 seconds back then is MAD. And so what was a relatively close top 10 has now finally started to stretch out. MAD, Mighty 38, interesting. Veloci still there inside the top 10, but those Audis, that choice seems to have just been a hit which they'll have to take.
It's difficult because I imagine they've all worked to that 150 million budget they had to buy cars across 7 categories. Now, we're talking about only 2 million difference between the Audi and the Porsche, whereas some other categories we see differences of like 5, 10, 12 million. So this one's quite small. It's interesting why they've taken that. Now, the Audi hasn't been able to compete at all. Whether they're at the limit entirely for the entire event to only not use 2 million in a race like this where the Porsche is absolutely dominating. It's an interesting decision. We'll possibly find out and have more information later on as the series goes on, as we get to speak to more drivers, speak to more teams about how the event's going. We can relay information if they're willing to share anything with us, of course. But at the moment, we've still got great battles on track. It's still Baguette Racing and Tyrrell, the original 2 from the first stint of the race that were battling for the lead. They find themselves still on the podium, fighting for 2nd and 3rd, so still money at stake at this point, so we'll see how they get on.
Got to be expecting pit stops soon. But Tyrrell doesn't fancy waiting for the pit stop to have another crack at Baguette Racing. It's round 2, it's the electric boogaloo, but this time for 2nd rather than 3rd. It's been, I tell you what, they could have just given up at this point, right? They could have just given up, said, oh, we've lost 2 positions, it's all over, the win's gone, but fair play to them, showing some great racing spirit, still keeping on it. And you know what, with how volatile the pit lane exits have been throughout the part of this race, there could be more. Aaron Martin Pilkington, give yourself a pat on the back, finally out of the car. What a stint. That's one of the best drives that you'll see here today, undoubtedly.
Absolutely, you cannot fault it, 55 laps of pretty much defending the whole way, and he done it perfectly. It's a shame the pits, just before the pit stop, it ended with a bit of contact, but up to that point, absolute masterclass.
And so, in, out, and shake it all about. We'll find out into the arena section, won't we? And once again, I feel like the pit stop's really helping the car that came in behind, actually. So Tyrrell noticeably closer to Baguette on exit. But Baguette, nice, safe, not taking any risks, just keeping it simple. And they are out and looking to extend that gap once again. Kitty Crew, they've also been in, out. The gap almost up to 4 seconds now. That is a sizable one. That is a defendable one. That is one where just keep all 4 things on the grey tarmac below you, and $3,000 should be coming your way in the next hour or so.
Yep, I think we're going to cut down to Bryn to catch up with the guys at Tyrrell to basically get a review of that impressive stint by Aaron.
Yeah, thanks very much there, Harry. I am with Aaron now, who just did a pretty impressive stint. He's a bit sweaty, he looks a bit tired, and we're only in race 3. But Aaron, that was a pretty remarkable first stint.
Thank you. That was my first stint in the day, and yeah, I'm absolutely ringing with sweat. Oh, it's horrible.
You were being pushed and pushed and pushed. There were quite a few coming together as well. We were watching it, and it just seemed you had to defend, defend, defend. And when you're in that position defending, it's very hard. You can't attack. All you can do is protect, and that means you can't get down the road further ahead of the chasing pack.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping the other guys would make mistakes, get me a little bit of space to run away, but they were constantly in my draft, so I was getting aero washed through the high-speed sections like Maggotts and Beckett's, so it ultimately slowed me down. But I had to switch with Billy earlier than we planned, because he's better than me in the 919, so hopefully he can get a podium for us.
That means going back to the calculator, trying to work out the times you can spend in that seat just there. The 2 commentators have been talking about car choice. With 9 different rounds, 7 different cars you've had to effectively buy with 150 million virtual dollars. how do you go about doing this? Because when you've been working with your team, you've been working across quite a few different time zones.
Well, there's been two main strategies we've seen today. So you've got the Mad Motorsport running the Ferraris, going for the money in the early stages. We wanted to go for the M8 because we do believe we have the team to take a podium. Maybe not the win, but take a podium, and that's realistic for us.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to come back to you in a bit. I think it's time for you to put your feet up and have maybe a cup of water, tea, but nothing stronger. Thank you very much, Aaron. Back to James and Harry.
Thank you very much, Brent. And we believe we found ourselves a little battle going on down here in the midfield, and it's involving a team that has been quite happy to battle. It's a Mighty 38, and for once in this race, pretty much since the start, we find ourselves with a Porsche on Audi battle, and we find ourselves completing a Porsche on Audi battle there. Mighty 38, I mean, they might as well have got a supercharger on that car because the Audi stood no chance.
I think he was lapping the Keep It Simple car, unfortunately. That's 10th place, Keep It Simple, being lapped by Mighty 38, so getting out of the way. It's a shame, though. We've sort of lost that intensity of the top four battling nose to tail for what's felt like forever, a luxury really, but we'll have to see what they can bring to the table. But we've got Mighty 38 on screen. Worth remembering again, we've mentioned it a few times, only 2 drivers in this event for them, unlike the other teams which have 3. So as this series goes on, they're going to start feeling it a bit more mentally and physically in terms of what they're able to do. But at the moment, can't fault them. I'm really proud of what they're doing with such limitations applied to them.
Of course, the eagle-eye viewers at home will notice that was indeed a lapped car, but we were hoping to maybe see a bit of a better comparison between the two. I think that was a bit of an exaggerated comparison perhaps, but either way, Mighty 38 continue their way onwards. 10 seconds away from MAD in 6th, and the bigger gap ahead, or bigger gap behind them. They are literally in no man's land. They could not be any further from anyone else if they tried. Which, to be fair, actually, when it comes to me and driving, that's better not just for myself because I feel calmer, but better for everyone else in case I mess up.
It's sort of 2 sides of a coin, really. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is whilst you've got no pressure on you, you tend to relax a bit more, and that's when mistakes can creep in. You take your eye off the ball, your mind starts to wander a bit, and you try and take it a little bit easier, but by doing that, you get out of a rhythm potentially, and I say mistakes can creep in. So it's no surprise we sometimes see cars make mistakes when they're driving by themselves because they've got no competition around them to keep them on edge and keep them finely tuned. So hopefully we won't see any of that from the car we're on board with Mighty 38. As you say, they're in a bit of no man's land at the moment, no one really to battle, but there's always a gap to a car ahead when you're in this position, and it's worth trying to get that gap down. See what comes of it, because I say lap 59 and 95, still a very long way to go. Anything can happen, still many pit stops to happen, so keep pushing. That's all they can do for now.
And since we've got a bit of a quiet moment in this race, I feel that with our 3rd race nearing completion now, 35 laps remaining after the end of this one, of course, I feel that it's a good time to look forward basically to the grander scale of the championship itself. We were asking plenty of questions about the teams of 3 put together. Would they all, or would at least some, be able to cohesively make a good go of it and come together and really put a challenge forward to the organizations that have turned up, the likes of Veloci, the likes of Williams. We see some excellent races in the form of Kitty Crew put together, and I feel like a lot of our predictions, a lot of what we thought was going to happen has. We look at Kitty Crew, we look at Williams, up at the top end of things. Veloci, maybe a little bit disappointing so far, but they've at least shown a potential to score money at the very least, of course taking 2nd in the 1st round. Baguette, another case of, you've got Aurelien Mare, better known as Lege, of course. Again, arguably one of the best drivers in Forza, leading that team and leading it well. They're constantly up at the top. Are there any favourites going forward, Harry, or do you think it's still a little bit too early to make those predictions just yet?
I think it's too early, and there's another factor to consider in all this, is that we're looking at cars being used, rather than everyone using the same car or the best car in every race, and we get a finishing order based on skill and ability. We have to remember that some of these guys are going to be racing cars that potentially aren't as quick as the other cars in the class that they're racing against on track. So as you mentioned, Veloce, second place in the first race, not really done much in race 2 or race 3 so far, but that's because they might be in sort of a economy mode, so to speak. They're using cars that allow them to do better in other races. And as you say, when you've got teams here that are already pre-formed and they work well together, then you've got teams here who have been sort of almost forced together because of how they've qualified. It presents a number of issues and problems that they need to overcome as a team. And it even comes down to things like, do they want to give themselves the best opportunity for every single race and have to fight the majority of other people for it? Or do they maybe take 2 races, 3 races out and say, we'll take a not so good car in these races, save a bit of money, put that money towards a race where we can definitely have the best car, have an upper hand against our competitors, and maybe go for 1, 2, 3 race wins rather than saving it for the big grand finale, so to speak. It's 2 ways of working it, and they have to agree on that together. So at the moment, race 3, I think it's 2. We've got many categories to go. Categories suit different driving styles and different drivers. I think we're going to be in a position where we've got teams winning different races and a number of different winners, not just the same couple or same 3 winning. I'm hoping that we're going to end up with multiple different winners based on the cars they're going to be driving.
Of course, one of the things that we can take forward, certainly from this particular race, is that we're in modern prototypes, and this is one of 2 classes which are going to be used twice over the course. So we're using them here at Silverstone, and we're using them later on. I believe it's race 8 of the day, and so this is actually a pretty good indication as to who fares well. Everyone's looking at Kitty Crew now and thinking, yikes, if they're at the back of the field when it comes to our second race start here, we need to work hard to keep them behind. Again, it's kind of it's the same question we were asking of, is everyone going to try and gang up on MAD Motorsport at the start of this race, try and get them behind? To some extent, it's kind of worked. They're down in P6. I don't think it's entirely because everyone has ganged up on them. There is obviously a pace differential in there. They're clearly not as home in these cars as the Kitty Crew are. But it's a question that we'll be asking of the modern GTEs that we'll be seeing later as well. They're going to be featured in 2 races. And so the Kitty Crew, Williams, I think Tyre Hard especially, they're going to be taking huge heart from these performances and thinking, well, all we've got to do is keep up this sort of form. And surely we're on course for even more money later on in the day. It poses a fascinating question as we move through our 24 hours. Such a long event, but I do love that we have so many different options. And of course, Silverstone, the first track deviating away from Le Mans. We actually head back to pre-1990 Le Mans for race number 4. That's going to be our last time that we're in the past, at least, for the track. Modern Le Mans is going to dominate proceedings for the second half, but we head to the likes of Sebring, we head to the likes of Spa-Francorchamps, and that is a couple of other tracks actually which, again, they're offering different styles of driving to Le Mans. And so, again, driver choice is going to be key. And a reminder that these guys, they only have a certain amount of time in the car. They've got to reach a certain point. Otherwise, the stewards won't be very happy at all. So it's so much strategy, not just in race, but throughout the entire event as well. And it's honestly, I'm loving it. It's great to see. You can see why we're trying to find other things to talk about, of course. bit spread out, unfortunately, but still, plenty to look forward to going forward.
Absolutely, as you mentioned, we've got Spa coming up, we've got Sebring coming up, tracks filled with history and pedigree in motorsport. So it's great to see them included in this kind of event. And again, even the same with the class cars that we've got in the categories. It's telling a history of Le Mans, and so we've already had cars from the 60s, Fords, Ferraris. We're now jumped to the other end of the spectrum for race 3 with modern prototypes. We're going to be going back a little bit again for the next few races in terms of Group 5 and Group C, absolute classics of Le Mans. And it's going to be great to see how these guys take them on, because they're another different driving style that's required to make them go quickly around a racetrack. So it's going to be, who do they use? Who's got the most hours available? Who's going to be nearing the limit? And who's going to be the freshest as well? They're going to get to that point tonight, early hours in the morning. They're going to start feeling it physically, because what they're driving on, it's not like pretty much any other esport. They've got a steering wheel, they've got pedals, they've got force feedback in the steering wheel. It's a case of they've got physical exertion to make this happen. They're not sitting there with a controller in their hand, they're doing it. They're replicating what real drivers do. yes, they don't have G-forces, no, that's fine, but they still have to exert physical ability to be able to drive these cars, and when they're doing it for such a long period of time, they're going to be sleep deprived, they're probably going to be a bit grumpy when there's a few incidents, and it's whether they're going to be falling out with other teams potentially, or falling out into team. If early as the morning and they're not particularly happy with how a teammate's driving or they're making mistakes, they can not turn on each other, but it can cause animosity, and that's the last thing you need in endurance racing when you're there as a team. You drive individually, but you have to essentially do it as a team, as a whole. So lots of interesting factors for us to look forward to outside of just the racing. The racing is its own sort of category that we look at on screen, but there's so many more behind the scenes things that attribute to that.
Now, of course, for that super final, one of the biggest, I guess, drawing factors is that the grid we're set for another Le Mans start, so getting into the cockpit, running. It's a short distance, admittedly, but of course the order is determined by championship. And so every single point that these guys gain over each other is a second head start. It is sizable, certainly. And I've just done the calculations here, and if things stay as they are, we see Kitty Crew joining MAD in first position on 31 points. As someone's well off the road there, and who is that? That looks like someone in the midfield, potentially. He's headed back on circuit. Was that the Veloci? No, it was MAD. It was Kian Butler. Someone, I was going to rep him. I was going to say this is his first big event, by the way. So fair play to him, doing an incredible job, already taking a win. But a bizarre moment, and he was lucky not to get punished even more.
And it's referencing what we mentioned earlier about when they're driving sort of around no one, it's very easy to have a lapse in concentration. And maybe that's all it took. Magnus and Beckett's fast corners, a little bit too wide on the exit, catch the outside curb, dip a wheel over it, it spits the car out. And I'm wondering to see what kind of damage they've got. I mean, they're not far away from a pit window, but they're not going to want to pit 2 or 3 laps early just for the sake of some damage, depending on how bad it is, because it throws everything out of kilter, so to speak. Obviously, there's nothing to take into account with the minimum and maximum driver time they've got. They might not be able to afford to pit 3 or 4 laps early because it might push someone over the limit of their maximum hours that they've got planned. It's another tactical decision they're going to have to take, but it was a weird incident, it has to be said, out of nowhere, really strange.
It was very bizarre, and it was just, I guess, one of those where you take your eye off the ball and you're going to lose it. It's as simple as, you know what, I don't think it's necessarily a case of mental tiredness either. I'm expecting to see that later on in the day. It just did seem like a slip. Thankfully not a slip thankfully a slip that didn't punish them too much. Moving onwards, Kitty Crew continue to extend their lead. It's almost 9 seconds now with 30 laps remaining. And I'm looking at MAD. So actually, MAD did lose a position. They went down to 7th.
I believe so.
90-38. So it's actually going to be Kitty Crew now, provisionally, in the lead of the championship.
And that's how quickly things can change. Before the race, we were talking about MAD, leading the championship by 5 points, and whether teams are going to have to gang up on them or drive differently to try and stop them from getting further ahead in the championship. One race is all it's taken for things to be equalised again. That's how quickly things can change, and that's why we love it. It's opportunities are there for everyone in every race. Reverse grids are involved, long races, times for mistakes, close racing, as we've seen at the front in this race. Not so much at the moment, but that 4-way battle that we had, that was just the definitive, just a way of showing what esports is about in motor racing. That's what we want to see, and they delivered perfectly.
Ultimately, great for us, the unbiased commentators, because it means a closer championship in the end. There's, as much as it's a bit of an eye raiser to see 1 second per point head start in the final race, there is something to be said about, but what if someone does end up winning all the races? What if someone does end up scoring podium after podium after podium, and ultimately finding that they're going to be some 10, 20 seconds behind someone else? I think this is actually proving that we don't have to worry about that so much. The teams are so closely matched that they can come in here, find a great match for themselves in and amongst each other, and I don't think we're going to be seeing much of a difference between the championship leaders by that final race. Again, it's going back to that question of, do we have any favourites at this early point? And I think even by race 8, there's not really going to be a favourite to speak of, because the points is simply going to be too close that 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, it might be all that's in it.
You then flip on its head every single race, so it always becomes harder. You almost don't want to be doing very well early on, and then slowly progress your way towards the top if you can, by benefiting from the high grid positions later on, because if you're at the top early on, you find yourself at the back of the grid most of the time. So it's nice to lead the championship, you're in the best place at the time, but it's working out what is the best way of doing it. And I'm sure these guys are going to start learning whether they prefer having to fight through the field on numerous occasions, or if it's like, well, we're not in the most competitive position at the moment, we'll just take a few good starting positions and then see what they can do about it. So it's a case of, how do they want to play it? They've got two options, and I think it's another interesting dynamic for them.
So taking a look now at the CMP, a CMP that we had so much hope for in those in the first 20 laps, languishing down in P8. Sadly, it's another situation where they looked so good for so long, and it's just kind of fallen apart. Is that an early pitter potentially? Williams up into third, Wildcats still to fifth. Is that potentially a timing glitch, or is that someone into the pits? It is someone into the pits, and it's Baguette, and they are calling this early. Very bizarre early.
We'll have to wait for the timing screen to catch up, as obviously they've just come into the pit lane. It's the only one that we've seen, but the timing gap I don't think is updated just yet. So Kikru still lead. Baguette Racing says 10.5 seconds behind, so maybe they have all pitted together. That's what they've done so far this race, so I'd imagine they've all pitted on the same lap. Obviously we've only just seen one car. So they're having to navigate the cold tyre phase once again after another pit stop. They're not in amongst each other for, I think, the first time this race they've managed to come out the pit lane without being entirely as a group. So we'll see whether fresh tyres, if anyone's going to change driver, and they can try and close back up if they can, to say we all want to see more of what we had earlier in the race of the four-way battle. But at the moment they've become spread out again. Kitty Crew Racing have taken off and haven't looked back, frankly, and at the moment it's hard to look past them for the win.
Coming through very loud and clear, Harry. Coming through loud and clear. So very much into the dying flames then of this race, I guess. Looking down to the final 25 laps or so. Anyone with simple maths can figure that out, of course. But it's very much been one which has seen lots of excitement, and I feel one that has solidified our thoughts on who is going to be up at the top of things for the remainder of the race, with the exception perhaps of the race to come. Let me tell you, the Group 5 race that's coming up, you want to stay tuned in for that, because that one is going to be a flipping of the form book if ever you have seen it. Just a bit of back marking to deal with here. Baguette Racing getting past Veloci, and I'm going to bring up Veloci again. It was a great article on Autosport where we were reading. They didn't really say much about their chances, except we're underdogs coming into this. And James Baldwin, very much well known around the scene, I think, but saying this is the first time actually I'm going to be driving on Forza Motorsport. And I feel for those of you at home who think that you can drop into whatever and race whatever and you'll be fine, it'll be great. Every simulator, every game has its differences, and Forza is no different in that regard. And so I think fair play to him. He has looked competitive. Of course, he was looking to head up that Veloci second place in the first race, looking great. But the team themselves playing down their chances, and it seems that right to do so as well. I think that they missed out on a good result in the second race. Clearly they're taking their hit in this one. And certainly in and amongst us commentators, we were saying, looking at the GTE races as well, not exactly picking up one of the favoured cars either. So perhaps a different strategy for them maybe to look and come away with certain podiums here and there rather than going for the big prize?
I think you hit the nail on the head, and obviously with James saying he's not done that much racing on Forza, it's a case of, well, if you've not got all that much time to be able to practice all of the cars, then you can pick a select few in a few categories and say, those are the ones we're going to concentrate on. We can try our best in everything else. If we pick up no scraps, then so be it, but we can really zone in on a few races and try our best in those and give ourselves the best opportunity, because all of the lot of you guys are very quick, but James has got such a diverse ability across multiple sims and driving games where he seems to be able to just jump in anything, and after hardly any time at all, he's there and he's able to compete. So having someone like that on your team is always handy. He can jump in anything and be reasonably quick, if not very quick. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they're looking at maybe a few races where they'll take what they can get in them, and then the others, not making up the numbers as such. It'll be hard work for them being in inferior cars, but you never know. Accidents happen, crashes happen, damage happens, and all of a sudden the best car suddenly isn't the best car because it's got damage. So
yeah, and we saw that last race with the Advocatus Diaboli car just completely falling off the map, it seemed. But then I'm going to pose this as a follow-up. You can consider this as a hypothetical situation. We weren't expecting it to happen, but it's maths, and so I have to put it forward to you. If someone was to have won races 1 to 8, that gives you $24,000, which is still less than if you win that final race.
Yeah.
You want to put yourself in the best position for that final race. And so why take the risk, or why not have the ambition to go for more and settle at a certain level is I don't know, I guess with some of these organizations, the drivers are on a contract, so they're not necessarily going to be worried as much, I say, with a lot of question marks on the end of it. It's an interesting situation, isn't it? And I want to dive into the mindsets of some of these drivers, figure out why not go for the big prize.
I think the main reason they've got is because they'll be under the impression that everyone else is going to do that. So you put yourself on somewhat of a level playing field where it comes down to ability, which arguably is what it should be about. But at that point you have to really fight for it. Whereas if you think, well, actually we're at risk, there's no guarantee of any high-end money, so we can look at other categories and take the hit in the big ones where everyone's going to be going for the bigger money, spending the most money on their cars for it. And then other categories, we'll say, well, we'll have the best cars in those. We'll pick up a few thousand, and that's better than risking, trying to go for the 25, getting caught up and coming away with nothing potentially. It's putting all your eggs in one basket again, as a scenario. Some people do it, some people don't. It works. Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yes.
They'll look at it and go, oh, we should have had that car for that race. We would have done much better. But everyone does that.
I'm sure we will reel through all of the commentators' cliches between all four of us by the end of the 24 hours. We can guarantee you that.
I've got
audience.
mine ticked off. Eggs in basket, done.
It's almost like a game amongst us, isn't it? It's a game of two halves. Oh wait, wrong sport. Never mind. It's a race of two halves. There we go. Except you can't half 95 into an even number. So the point is void. Listen to James rambling, and you're going to be questioning all sorts of things by the end of the day. Tyre wall. They asked questions. They got questions asked of them. Third position. Should they be happy? Could they be happy? Should they be worried? They're only 2 seconds behind Baguette, but Williams lie only 7 seconds behind them. Potential for more. Potential for a lot less, money less.
I think they'll be happy with how things have gone over the last 10 laps to be within range of Baguette Racing again. This group that we saw early on in this race, which provided just unbelievable entertainment, it's been expanded. The gaps have all come to fruition, but now it's starting to close up again between at least two of them, which is what we want to see. And, it's the two from the very start of the race that we saw battling throughout the first stint, providing such good racing. The start of Aaron's masterclass of defence, if you will, and now they're going to be on the opposing side. They're going to be one trying to do the attacking, and I'm sure the car ahead, Baguette Racing, they've seen what kind of defensive masterclass they've had to face, so we'll see if they can apply what they've learned to themselves.
It should be mentioned as well, actually, that of course Martin Wilkinson now out of the car, and the South Korean Jung Hyuk currently sitting in there. So honestly, this tells me that there's good pace across the three of them. They know that they were going to, obviously before the race, that they were going to split it between these two. And Christopher Cabrera in that Baguette Racing car just going to be keeping a mindful eye behind. 1.5 seconds. That gap is slowly starting to trickle down.
It's reeling him in, that's for sure.
And like there is still over 20 laps remaining. Second is on the cards. Very much so.
Absolutely. I say, this set of drivers they've got in at the moment looks like the Taiwan Racing cars once again become the quicker car of the two. We'll find out eventually. Once they get nose to tail, whether Baguette Racing suddenly step on it and keep a constant gap or pull away, or whether they are generally slower than Taiwan Racing. It's interesting to see. It ebbs and flows, so we'll see what happens. Right.
Well, we are going to give you a bit of a taste of reality in virtual reality. Bryn, apparently you have something for us. Please do show us.
I'm not sure about that. I'll tell you what I do have, though. Nothing for you personally, but I thought I'd take you on a little grid walk, really, show you around what happens. So, where we are here, we've got all the garage setups, really, and you can see the teams behind. This is where now we're expecting to see teams really, really relaxing and using the downtime. So, SMP Racing, I don't know if you can see, but down there they've got a couple of tennis balls. I'm not sure if they're going out the back there and having a game of tennis or what they're doing with it, but I think it might be just to sort of keep their brains active while they're not being active. And as we move further down towards garage number 12, lots of teams are kind of a bit separated now. We mentioned this before, because different nationalities, different time zones, that sort of thing, people are getting tired at different stages. So whilst it is only, I look at my watch, 6:05 here, in the US, it's midday, whereas in Japan or Australia, it's kind of middle of the night, isn't it? So different time zones. We can see the MAD Motorsport guys, well, one of them's got a pillow, and he's sitting up right now, but he's actually from Mexico, so he's currently around midday. So, yeah, but he's got a pillow, why not? As we go further down here, we have the team from China. We have Williams Esports as well. And some of the teams watching what's going on, some of the teams deciding it's a good idea to step away. Of course, where we are, we have these beautiful doors, and we can see through there that the sun is shining, but we don't get to see or feel what it's actually doing outside where we are. So it's quite nice to have a reminder that life is going on outside this beautiful arena whilst all this crazy driving is going on track. So yeah, you can see there are people resting, people putting their feet up, some people trying to get some sleep whilst I jabber on at them. But yeah, that's what's going on down here while our lovely commentators are up there on their nice stage seeing what's going on. But James, I just wanted to put one thing to you. You were saying about the points and why these teams might not go for the big prize in the final race, race number 9. But of course, remember that even if they finished fairly well leading up race 1 to 8, they might get $1,000, $2,000 per race. They might get no money per race, but they are accumulating points, so it gives them a better chance when it comes to race 9. If you do well in races 1 to 8, you significantly increase your chances of doing well in race 9 just naturally.
I was put in my place, wasn't I? Goodness me. And actually a fair reminder as well that, well, for these first 8 races, of course, it is first to third who score money. Score money? Earn money? Both, right? In that final race, it is first to 6th. And so obviously there is a much bigger net, so to speak, to find yourself in to actually get something away from this event. And I think that Bryn, that is a very, very valid point, even if you find yourself in the middle of the grid for that final race. 6 is within sight.
Absolutely, and it also highlights the fact that, if you pick good cars through races 1 to 8, forgetting about, let's say, modern GTE, it's the final race, that's what they're in. So every other category they've got, if they pick the best cars in those other categories, get some good points, and also do well in the championship, it means that when they go into the final race, yes, they might not have the best car, but they'll have a good starting position. But on screen, you've got Williams and Wildcats racing. James?
Let's talk about Wildcats, shall we? Again, this has been a bit of a crescendo race for them. Wibbly wobbly and then moving up the scales, moving up the octaves. And Wildcats really looking to make Williams pay. Once again, we think back to that incident where they spun from that battle for the top 4. And all of that has domino affected down to them struggling to hold on to P4 at this late stage. The Wildcats are, I'd say, fully deserving of this position, in a similar position to Kitty Crew in the sense of starting further back than they would have wanted. They're looking to recover from a couple of races where things arguably should have gone better for them had they just kept things a little bit more tidy. And now they're looking to come through at the third time of asking. They're looking to convert. And fourth is theirs for the taking. Exactly 20 laps to do it, Harry. I would say that the signs are looking good.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've caught that gap up. It's interesting to see how Williams have fallen. No, they were corners away from taking the lead midway through the race, and now they're struggling to hold on to fourth place. Obviously, they've had driver changes among the pit stops, and obviously, yes, they had that incident and they may have picked up damage, but it would have been fixed in the pit stop. So there's no excuse on that side of things for their pace. So who knows what's going on? They're maybe just a bit flustered from that earlier incident. They're a bit downbeat about it. They lost their chance to win. So there's still no fighting on track. No, Wildcats are still there in their rearview mirror, looming large. So we're going to have to see where they fancy making a move. Obviously, the best place is going to be end of Hangar Straight, end of Wellington Straight, of course. But we've seen already from these guys that they can overtake pretty much anywhere they like.
Very much so, and I feel like it's worth mentioning that Williams have had a driver change actually since we were last with them, so Gary Mitchell now in the car. Wildcats have committed with Jacob Boquet in that car. Remember, slightly broken arm on that lad as well. Committed to the 3 hours, so it seems, but even still, a great advert for once you're in the groove, regardless of, you know, the disparities with the pit stop exits and trying to get the tyres up to, he's gotten used to that whole procedure. Gary Mitchell hasn't, and I feel that is what is partly to play for this resurgence, in the first place, I guess, from Wildcats. It's another lap. It's another lap of Williams remaining in P4. The Wildcats on the prowl, Jacob on the prowl. Any look into Arena, he brakes very late to go to the outside. Maybe just doing some sighter laps at the moment, Harry, figuring out where best to attack him and when.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Now, whilst you sit behind a car this close for a few laps, you can see where they're looking strong, where they're weak compared to yourself, and you can try and plan an attack, really. Or in this case, Wildcats looking to pounce, I suppose. But, they're just trying to open up the exit of some corners, and they try and get the power down nice and early. But you can see a good line from the car in front, basically blocking that ability to get a run off the corner. So although they're struggling for pace in the Williams car, at the moment they're driving the perfect lines they need to hold on. But it's, as I say, 19 laps to go. It's a long way to drive like that when it's not ultimately fast.
Williams seemed to have gained just a little bit in the second sector. Through Maggots and Beckett. Oh my goodness me, you can see where Wildcats are gaining their time, can't you? That was about 0.5 of a second gobbled up in the space of 2 corners. But Williams on exit just gain a little bit back, and they might have that advantage to take with them to defend into Stowe. In fact, in the slipstream even, Wildcats really unable to close in too much. It's under braking, it's into those faster elements of Maggots and Beckett's where their time seems to be gained, but unfortunately for them, Williams are strong in the other half of the circuit, in the slower corners, in just getting the best possible exit. And on the flip side as well, keep in mind, Wildcats, they scored 8 points. They scored a 5th position in race 2. This would be consistency. They don't want to throw away these 8 points.
Absolutely, and it looks like the Williams car is just struggling for sort of direction change at the moment. Say a tight part of the circuit. We're looking down the outside, a bit of a lock up though, I think, on the entry. Yeah. So that's going to ruin any chance of overtaking down the Wellington Straight. But again, it's another opportunity to have a look at where they're strong. They know by now, surely, that they're very strong in the high-speed corners. Maggots and Beckett's, you saw it last lap, almost running into the back of them. They were that quick, and on brakes as well. They look really good under braking. Now, the problem with being good under braking and braking late is you normally sacrifice your exit. So they've got to find the balance to try and open up an opportunity, because at the moment they're just driving around following them. They need to try and force a move if they can, or force a mistake, but time to do it.
So it's into that danger zone once again for Williams. Wildcats through there, we're on board with the Williams now, looking at how they take it. Once again, Wildcats particularly quick through there. You get the impression if Wildcats are able to make an overtake and make it stick, once they're at this section, they're going to be home and clear. But that is a big if, because it's not just a case of getting past them, but getting past them at the right time as well. Because I think that if they were to get past, for example, in Arena, or even here at Stowe, actually, Williams have a good chance to re-overtake them. Not going to happen on this lap, of course, as we head into the pits. And again, that's kind of how the cars behind catch up. They're able to throw it in there. The game then automatically slows them down. I guess we'll see what order they reappear in, because we have seen some switchovers throughout the course of this race.
It does seem to be hit and miss. No, they enter the pits sort of nose to tail, and sometimes they come out in the same order, sometimes they've been reversed. It's interesting to find out, but as you say, that Wildcat racing car looks incredibly quick. Maybe it's setup. They can change setup with these cars. So the Williams look good in a straight line. No, the Wildcat car wasn't gaining in the slipstream, so maybe less downforce on the Williams. That's why they might be struggling a bit more in the high-speed section of the track. But you can see they have re-emerged in the same order as they entered.
But they have not emerged, or at least one of them hasn't emerged with the same driver, though. Jacob is out, and Shoma Takaya is in the car. That team is pretty explicit in saying he's our fast guy. He is our guy to go to when we want to overtake, when we want to qualify well. And so I think they have sensed the opportunity. They've sensed that Williams are there for the taking. And whether this was planned or whether this is an on-the-fly change, it's possible to do that. Of course, the adjudicators, they know when a driver comes in and out. It's all prepared here in the arena. They have seen Williams struggling, and they're going to go full beans for it, and fair play to them. They might as well have a go.
Absolutely. Obviously, Jacob should be getting a huge pat on the back from his teammates to claw them back into the position they're in now, to provide Shoma with the opportunity to then go essentially complete the job. I've caught the gap, you go finish it off by making the move. Obviously catching is one thing, overtaking is quite another, but again, that's probably why they've got two different drivers to do each job. Maybe that's how it works for them, but at the moment they seem to have fallen away just a little bit. Obviously just waiting for the tyres to come up to temperature, pressures to come up, and then they can try and close the gap. Or maybe with the driver swap it's not going to work. Maybe they're going to lose lap time. I don't expect that to be the case, but you never know.
Use the Forza Shoma. Use it. To be fair, actually, there I was making a wonderful reference, and it turns out that he's falling away. So Gary Mitchell, actually, to be fair, we've got to consider actually that Gary Mitchell has spent a bit of time in this car now himself, and so obviously it takes a bit of acclimatization. It's not like Jacob, who's just come out the car. He's Shoma's fresh. He's got to get settled. Gary's got that advantage in this crossover stage.
Absolutely, and obviously as the race comes to not an end just yet, but we're getting towards the latter stages of it. It looks like the battle for second or third is going to come on again between Baggett and Tyrell, which we might pick up in the near future. Obviously, we're just seeing if anything's going to happen between the Wildcats car and the Williams car. But yeah, at the moment, Gary Mitchell doing a good job of pulling a gap, giving them a bit of a comfort blanket, so to speak, at this point of the race, which is just what they need. They've had a difficult race. They've had a real low of fighting for the lead, and now find themselves battling for fourth and fifth position, but he's doing a good job of pulling the team up and saying, fourth place, we can do that. It's a good result overall, and we can take that forward in the championship. But we'll see what comes from the next few laps, whether that gap increases, stabilises, or decreases.
I would be curious to take a sneaky peek at the battle between Tyrell and Baguette, mostly because it's a second and a half away, and I guess we're one pit stop away from the end, aren't we? There's got to be one more stop, and then
most likely lap 88. I'd expect them to all be back in the pits, and then that'll be it. That'll be driving to the line from there. So I don't imagine anyone's going to risk a driver change for the last stint. Not out of the question, but I doubt it.
We are in the final 15 laps, and there is two battles, I think, still to be resolved. They will be resolved, but for now, it's over to Bryn.
Thanks very much there, James. I'm with Jacob, who just did a remarkable 77 laps in the car for the Wildcats. Jacob, you've had a few moments to relax before I come over to you, so how was that?
It was mixed, really. My pace was good, but I wiped someone out at the start. At turn 3, I missed my braking zone and hit someone. I got a penalty that I deserved, and that threw me off. I dropped about 6 positions. I think I had the pace. I was catching the Williams driver there, so I was happy with that. now we've got Shoma in the car, and I reckon he's going to do a good job.
So when it comes to planning changes, you're in the car for a very, very long time, or in the driving seat for a very, very long time here. So was this a plan change that you were going to come out at 77, or was it around that area?
It was planned, yeah. We have a spreadsheet, and we said, I'll do 2 hours, and the closest pit stop to that was on lap 77, because this car pits on every 11 laps, so it has an 11-lap cycle. And we worked out I'd do 2 hours for this one, Shoma would do 2 hours for the Sebring race later in the 919.
So you've got essentially two more pit stops left for this race to go. So when you're in this driving position for 2 hours, how do you keep yourself focused? Because drinking's really important, eating's really important. What have you been stuffing?
Yeah, I try and keep hydrated, but you do lose focus, especially with that big screen up there. You occasionally glance over. When there's a four-car battle for the lead, it's kind of hard to keep your eyes off. But I just kept my eyes on the road when I wasn't looking at the screen. But yeah, I just tried to keep hitting my apexes, and every lap I was looking at the distance markers on the finish line just to measure my progress.
But you've got Group 5 coming up, a 2-hour race, then you've got another 2-hour race with Group C, then a 3-hour race with the modern GT. It's relentless, isn't it? So when are you next going back in the seat?
I think I'm going to do a small stint in the BBLM, only like 5 laps or something, because that car only just misses out on the one stop, so it has a little bit of time over that I'll be filling. And then after that, I don't think I'm doing the C9 race, but I will be having a little stint in the M8 around Spa.
Fine, okay, well, I'll let you relax a bit. We are kind of nearly through 7 hours of racing, so go and relax, and we'll head back to our commentators. I've given them a bit of a break as well. They've had a few swigs of water, I'm sure. Back to James and Harry.
Anything but relaxed, Bryn. We're in the middle of a great battle, and we're actually in the middle of Tyre Wall, just about taking second. Baguette are going to fight back on the inside of the club. We're being thrown straight into the deep end. In contact between the two on the exit, and through the veil, through club. Onto lap 83, Baguette just about hold on to second, but we were looking at that gap coming down, 1.5 seconds, 1 second, and we are nose to tail now, Harry. As you said, one more pit stop to go, but Tyre Wall want to enter that final pit stop ahead of their fierce French rivals.
Absolutely, they're not wasting any time in wanting to get this job done. They want to get in front and just drive away so they can have a somewhat comfortable end to the race and not have to worry about still making this move as the race end draws closer. In the slipstream now down the Wellington Straight, it's a bit far back to try and move, but anything's possible sometimes, but thinking better of it. Sneaking up the insides, just can't quite make it through. It's the way they drive these cars, they get it in deep into the apex and then rotate it quickly, but by doing that you leave the inside of the corner open for someone to try and stick their nose in, which is always dangerous. But these two don't. We've come full circle. They've let other people join into their battle as the race has gone on, but as the end comes, they're just basically making it another duel between themselves.
And what a wonderful duel it has been as well. Currently in the car, of course, up in the white, yellow and blue Tyre Wall car, and in that white, blue and red machine, Christopher Cabrera, who has been in it now for a long old time, facing his hardest challenge yet. Down the hangar straight, it looks like he's just done enough to keep this late challenge from Tyre Wall at bay. Again, we talk about that light at the end of the tunnel. He's going to want to be running for it at this stage, because Tyre Wall, they've been so great in defense. But you know what? They've not been too shabby in offense as well.
Absolutely, they now get to do roles reversed of what we saw in the early part of the race. Tyre Wall is going to be overtaking. Baguette, I'm sure, would have learned a lot following the Tyre Wall car for so long during this race to see how the defensive lines work, and when they were trying to overtake, they would have learned what doesn't work, and they could try and amend that to their own driving. But it's difficult to make an overtake. We're going to see, as the race draws in, you can take more risks. So I'm looking forward to the fireworks, shall we say.
It's great to see as well, people sort of crowding around the screens of interest, this battle captivating the majority of the arena, it must be said, and why not as well. $2,000 and $1,000 on the line for these guys, and I'll just be hoping that and we'll just be hoping, I think, as well, that they can just keep it clean and that we can have a great battle for the next 12 laps or so. Into Maggots and Beckett's then, it is still Baguette leading tyre wall. Williams and Wildcats, they've settled down a little bit. They're way on further down the road and looking up the road from here as well. Kitty Crew over 10 seconds clear, 15 seconds clear almost by this point. They're home and dry. I think there's not really much point in worrying about that battle, if there was a battle there at all, of course. It's all about these two, and I'm sure these two will be very much in like a little micro-universe of theirs. There's only one person they care about, and that is each other, and where they finish at the end of this.
Absolutely, they're in that phase now where the surprise element is gone. I'm sure it wouldn't be a surprise anyway. They would have watched that gap coming down lap after lap, but to then see the car large in your rearview mirror, that's when it hits home that you've got a battle on your hands. But the Taiwan car's been there for a few laps now. Baguette Racing would be used to the sight of it. It's just trying to work that opening if they can and force an error. But Baguette Racing, they're experienced drivers. They know how Forza works. So it's interesting to see if they could be forced into a mistake. But they're going to try their best as always.
We are then better known in wider gaming circles as Billy Su, the South Korean Jung-yuk. Of course, following up on the mega stint from Martin Pilkington that saw them lead the race for the majority of the race as well. Picking the scenes to play a part of and picking them well. It's now up to him, the South Korean, of course, to make Martin Pilkington's hard work in the first stint pay off. But Baguette, they're looking strong through these fast sectors, and this is a slight worry, I feel, for the tyre wall squad, Harry, because as much as these seem evenly spread on pace, it's Stowe Corner where I see tyre wall's best chance. And if Baguette's tyre wear is as well managed as it is now, then there is going to be little chance without a serious send up the inside for tyre wall to make that overtake a reality.
Absolutely, as I say, a lot of it depends on the racing line of Baguette Racing, whether they can withstand that pressure. Because, that car is seriously close to the back of the Baguette Racing car. They're going to see that themselves in their mirrors. They've got to not be put off by that. They've got to keep an eye out to make sure they can cover any attacking move with a defensive line. But by doing that, they're just slowing themselves down, and it's then going to be taken away from their ability to drive as flat out as they know they can. Slow themselves down more, cost themselves more time, and then that always means you're in range of being overtaken. So it's a difficult one for them to manage. But as we said, they're very experienced. They know how to defend, they know how to attack. So if any team's going to be as prepared as possible for it, they are one of them, certainly.
It is a cumulative 1,800 brake horsepower between the two of these being used to its absolute maximum. No holds barred. Still Kitty Crew with the fastest lap of the race, that 1:39.1. To be fair, I don't think Baguette and Tyre Wall are going to be worrying about that too much through Copse. It is still Tyre Wall behind, and once again into this Maggots and Beckett section, we'll see whether Baguette eke out that little bit more of an advantage. And again, they just look so much more planted. It seems like the Tyre Wall car has to work so much harder into Maggots at the very least. On exit of Beckett's as well, it's just so much more cleaner from the Baguette car.
It is, but I think what the Tyre Wall car does, it goes off track there on the run down the hanger straight for some reason, losing a bit of time. But I think what they're doing through Maggots and Beckett's is they've got to take those wider, sweeping, harder lines to try and open up the exit to carry the speed out and possibly open up an opportunity into Stowe Corner, as we keep mentioning. But Baguette Racing have been faultless so far in this particular battle. They've not opened any door, they've not made any small mistake. In fact, this Tyre Wall that we've just seen make a mistake down a straight line. They've just caught the grass, and when you do that, it just hooks the car off the circuit. So they've got to keep in mind of that.
The student has become the master, and the master is, well, the master rather, seems to be an old dog that could learn a couple of new tricks. A reminder to everyone that we still have one more pit stop scheduled before the end of this race, and if every other pit stop is to go by, then there could be one final twist in the tail on pit exit. We await that pit stop with intrigue. A mistake there from Baguette Racing. They go deep into Brooklands, but through Luffield they maintain the position. And let's be fair to Baguette as well. They've come back from mistakes this race, Harry, as flawless as Tirewall has been throughout the majority of this race, Baguette has shown great character to come back in.
Absolutely, and it's not just this race that we need to concentrate on, it's last race as well, the end of last race, the disappointment they felt by losing out on that podium finish in somewhat controversial circumstances that we understand. There's a lot riding on this for them. This is their way to bounce back and make an impact and let everyone know, say, we're not going to be put down by that kind of incident. We're just going to carry on doing what we can do, drive for our best ability, and holding on to this second place would send a message to the other teams for sure.
I was curious about the Williams Wildcat battle. They're still second and a half away from each other. The Wildcat's not really pressuring, hence why we're looking at this. And a call has been made. The undercut attempt is in progress. Tirewall, they've pulled the trigger. The question is, will it actually pay off?
It's an interesting one. We've not seen it at all this race.
Nope.
Normally we see these cars exit the pit lane. They're scrambling around on cold tyres, so it's hard to find out how it's going to work. Obviously, they fill it up with fuel as well, so it's interesting to see how it's going to work for them. We'll find out soon. I say they get that extra lap now, though. Do the Baguette Racing team extra lap on lower fuel? Yes, they're on warm tyres, but lower fuel, that makes a big difference. And these guys got to warm their tyres up now on this out lap. It's difficult to see how an undercut works, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. Just prove me wrong.
It's a later strategy, isn't it? I believe we'll be going to Bryn in just a little bit. In fact, we're going to go to Bryn now. So Bryn, over to you.
James, I've just been talking to the guys from Tirewall Racing about what their strategy is, and they were trying to get past Baguette. We saw them for a while trying to get past Baguette Racing, and actually they've got more pace than Baguette Racing have, or they believe they do anyway. They've got John in the car right now. They believe he's very, very fast, and so what they decided to do, as you called it as well, but what they decided to do was pit. Get the pit stop out of the way. They needed to do one more, so they decided to get that pit stop out of the way, carry on with John in the car, and try and get the undercut from when Baguette go into the pits, which I believe they might be doing very, very soon. We have got round about 7, 8 laps to go, so I would imagine if Baguette have not gone in just yet, they will be soon, and maybe they'll be done on the undercut.
And you are correct. They have responded in kind with a pit stop of themselves. So here's the situation as it plays out, folks. Yes, they have performed the undercut. They've got colder tyres. They've got to warm it up. And so on this lap, supposedly, Baguette have the advantage. They've got the warm tyres. They've got the lower fuel amounts. But once we come round again, Tirewall are going to have the warmer tyres. They're going to have similar fuel amounts. It'll be pretty much... There's no difference between the two, but of course Baguette has to warm up their tyres still, and that is where Tirewall will be hoping to make their mark. Here they are, leaving the pits, Baguette Racing. Up they come, out of the pit lane exit, and is that Tirewall through? I think it is. Tirewall, the undercut has worked. They're into P2 and with warmer tyres to boot.
Well, colour me surprised. I couldn't see it working, but what a masterclass of a lap that must have been. No, he must have nailed it perfectly to get the tyres to work and make the most of it. A heavy fuel load against a car that's running empty. That's an incredible job by him. They've both of them, to be fair, fully deserve a second place for this race, but we have to take our hats off to them. They both provide a lot of entertainment, but we've still got time to go. Who's to say that the Baguette Racing car doesn't come back at them in the remaining stages? We'll find out.
What's to say? Nothing's to say. There's every possibility, Harry, of course. There is still everyone else around them to pit, but what a call from Tirewall to say, you know what, we're going to go off script here. We're going to call our own strategy. We're going to dictate what's happened. If they do take second, whoever made that call should be, I don't know, given a larger share or something. Apparently, it's Kyoei who called them into the pit, so the Japanese portion of that team, Kyoei, decided, you know what, let's take a gamble. Let's take a gamble. We're not going to be fighting for first. Fourth is far enough behind. We might as well, and at least for the short term, it has paid off.
It's an interesting factor to mention whether Baguette Racing knew if it would be possible. Like, did they know that the undercut would work or not? Because if they knew it as a possibility, just for safety purposes, why wouldn't have they implemented it into their own strategy? They stayed to script, as you say, and it's Tirewall Racing who have gone off script, and it's paid dividends for them. And I'm happy for them. To do that kind of thing, it's a brave decision to do in a race like this, where essentially there's £1,000 on odds between the two finishing positions. So they basically just risked it, and they're going to gain potentially $1,000 from it, I should say. So great stuff.
That's $333 33 cents between the three of them, plus that odd cent which you have to awkwardly like cut in three. I don't know how they really do it.
Keep it
but
on
either way,
alternative weekends.
I give Kyoe a bigger amount. If they get that extra $1,000, just give him an extra couple of them or something, because he might very well have earned them that. 6 laps, or rather 5.5 laps, I guess, at this point, left remaining of what has been a thrilling and enthralling and intriguing 3 hours of Silverstone. It's only race 3 of 9 out of our total proceedings here at the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final, but goodness me, if the first 3 events are anything to go by, then you should stick around. Of course, do get up in between the races, stretch your legs and whatnot. Do eat, please. If you need to sleep, do sleep. I'll be trying to, I guess, at some point, but also stay tuned as much as you can, because there is plenty more to come. So Baguette, what is left in the tank? They are 2 seconds away now from tyre wall. They've used those warm tyres to perfect effect, haven't they? The gap hasn't been that big in 20 minutes.
No, it's difficult to see a way back for them now. You'd expect that first lap now where Baguette have got the tyres up to where they want them to be. If they had the pace to really put the pressure on, they'd be utilising it now. So, it only takes one mistake to have a large time loss. So again, they've done the hard work so far of getting the jump, getting the undercut, playing the strategy correct on the tyre wall side. They've just got to make sure they bring it home in one piece now and not give an opportunity to Baguette Racing to come back at them in the remainder of the last 5 or 6 laps for them.
Of course, a shout out to the Kitty crew who, after they took the lead of the race, we kind of left them to their own devices, haven't they?
They've absolutely earned that win today. This race, the overtaking ability they showed and their race pace and everything about it has been just sublime. So hats off to them, provided they bring it home. I'm not commentating cursing anyone, but no, you can't fault them. They've done everything perfectly.
Now, you see, I didn't really take too much notice of this, but Arnoux back in the car as well for the final 7-8 laps. Now, I question why they didn't keep Cabrera in, because Cabrera was the one in the groove.
So they've changed tyre in the last...
they've changed driver in the last stop.
Again, it could come down to the fact that we mentioned earlier in this race in terms of maximum and minimum driver time. They might be at a point where they have to do that. Ideally, you have 2 guys driving. You have to make at least one compulsory driving change. So if you have 2 guys racing, you get the most familiarity with the car, the most time in the car, the most consistency with it. It's a big ask to put a guy in for the last stint of a race, after nearly, probably best part 2 hours, 45 minutes when it's been, to then jump in the car for the last 15 minutes and go catch that car that we just lost a place to and get second back. I'll be impressed if he does it. Never say never, but time's running out.
It is indeed. The laps are betraying Baguette a little here. Mind you, they brought the gap down just a little bit there. 1.5 seconds now once again. Arnoux warming up the tyres, warming up in terms of his groove, which, again, it's not like he completely lost it. I guess he has driven basically half of this race already, but even still, he's had time out the car, he's had to jump back in. It is the proverbial sand timer, isn't it? It's trickling down, and it's certainly not looking in favour of Baguette. But good news for Baguette, at least, is that they are 9 seconds ahead of Williams. Williams, who are showing late pace, but those earlier incidents, those spins, they've come back to haunt them badly.
They'll be kicking themselves for sure. It's not just a case of you've thrown away a potential win. They've essentially thrown away podium position.
Yeah.
There was 4 of them battling, of course, so there's always going to be one loser out of that in essence. But to be the loser in that situation because of the circumstances they found themselves in, that's going to hurt them. And again, it's like what the Baguette Racing have had to do from last race. They're going to have to pick themselves up, get going again for next race, and see what they can do, because Baguette Racing, they've responded brilliantly. They're not looking odds-on favourite for second place at the moment, but they're still going to get a podium finish, still going to get money after such a disappointing end to a 2-hour race last time out, and to lose it the way they did. That was very harsh on them, but they've rebounded perfectly.
It would be another $1,000 to add to the $1,000, which they've already picked up. Just taking a look at the Wildcats car as well. Shoma Takaya taking it home, P5. It would be their joint best result. Of course, they took P5 in race 2, P5 again. really starting to pick up the consistency. And this was, I would say, a more impressive P5 because they picked it up from the jaws of defeat. Jacob himself admitting in that first stint, I deserved a penalty for hitting other cars off the track. It threw me off completely. I had to get myself back in the right mindset. Great character from him and brilliant job from Shoma to bring it home.
Absolutely. They're not satisfied with 5th place by the looks of it either. They're still chasing down the rear of that Williams car. What they would do for it to just move aside and let them through, I'm sure they would give anything. Probably not pay them the winnings that they'd get from this event, but, you know, they want that position. And say, it's great because it's not worth any money, but it's pride and it's an extra point in the championship that plays a part in the last race. That's all the way in tomorrow. It's such a long game they have to play, and they have to look at it, you know, as every position counts, even if it's not the top 3, which is where the money is.
Maybe one less, or conversely one more second, depending on if they're able to take the lead of the championship, of course, that they wouldn't have to worry about. You know, it's another one on the board. Any way you look at it, it'll help. And also I think there's that extra bit of pride of, hey, we beat Williams Racing. How cool is that? Or Williams Esports, rather. Onto the hanger straight then. But not really close enough. And as fast a driver as Takaya is, Gary Mitchell has fully acclimatized to the car. He might have been struggling early stages, but he looks back to his normal self. And it's going to take a monumental effort in these last 3 laps now to be able to wrestle 4th off them.
Absolutely. The Williams car, no, the driver in there, we're looking at Gary Mitchell. Yeah. He'll be counting down the corners at this point. And forget counting down laps, he'll be counting down corners per lap. You know, they've been in the cars for the best part of, or not in the cars themselves, but they've been racing for the best part of nearly 3 hours. And it's incredible that after 3 hours of racing and driver swaps and numerous pit stops,
still this close.
They're separated by a matter of yards, and it's great to see. And they don't want to give away a position this late in the race, and at the same time, they don't want to finish that close behind a car. There's always the incentive to go and fight for it, and we'll see if they get in a position to make any kind of overtaking maneuver. Obviously, they can't force it. They need to be in a position to do it, and as you can see, they're working really hard to make that happen.
These two still going, Hammer and Tong. Kitty Crew, I would say cruising at this point. They've not really extended the gap. The gap's come down marginally, just making sure that they get it to the end. Big $3,000, big 12 points look to be heading their way. Championship lead, more crucially, looks to be heading their way. In the meantime, Wildcats still have to look for P4. Decent exit out of Chapel. You could say the same for the Williams car as well, though. It was pretty equal, honestly, and it sees a similar situation to last time where Williams are unopposed moving into Stowe. Our leaders are on the penultimate lap of the race. Time for Takaya is running out, and he saw perhaps a little opportunity there, but Mitchell fancied not giving him that opportunity, closed the door pretty sharpishly. He doesn't want to keep his eye off the ball at this stage.
No, as they move on to the penultimate lap, it's a difficult one for the Williams team to defend because they can't drive the defensive line every time because they'll get caught out on the exit. So, but they can't afford to leave the door open because before they know it, there'll be a Porsche up there inside and making their move. So they can't win either way, but at the moment, they're holding on. And as I say, 2 laps to go. They're running out of time, the Wildcats team, to try and make a move.
So, can they do it? That is the big question on our lips, certainly. 1.5 laps remaining. Round Luffields and up through Woodcote. Seemed like a poor exit from Takaya on this particular occasion. And every one of those small mistakes, Harry, is just going to be giving Mitchell more and more incentive to stay ahead and to defend just that little bit harder, because it could end up being one final lunge into the Vale, into Club. And if he's just that little bit more stubborn, it could mean the difference between 4th and 5th.
Absolutely. As I say, we're coming towards the end of the penultimate lap now. They're really running out of time to try and make a move. They're too far behind at this point to be able to make anything of it. So it's going to have to be a last lap lunge somewhere. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. It's going to be time. But they're too far behind at this point. They need to close that gap up, and they've got a lap to do it.
Kitty Crew on the final lap. And very soon these two will be as well. What a race we have been treated to. It has had plenty of ups, that is for sure. And moving on up in the world are the Kitty crew. They started mid-pack, they fought their way to the front, and they have not looked back since. It was Nyman making those big money moves, and it's race boy Evan Thorogood, the Canadian, bringing it home. Just a stunning drive, and I guess really for the first time in this particular event, filling that potential which we knew they had.
Absolutely. Obviously, we've seen like multiple cars this race get towards the front, struggle to make their way through, get caught up in instants. These guys rocked up, made their way through, and then drove off into the distance. Sublime.
9 points and 10 points. A fourth and a third. That is their record so far. You'd think that second will be the next one on the list, but not on this particular occasion. Down the hangar straight, they just have 4 more corners to navigate. A Canadian, an American, a Brazilian. It's the Americas represented, and it is the Americas that will find themselves on the top step of the podium after 3 hours of Silverstone. It is the Kitty crew who takes home P1. 12 points go their way, $3,000 go their way. The lead of the championship goes their way. As for P2, who is making their way through, I think it is going to be Tire Wall Racing, who takes home P2. Yes, it is. It's going to be Baguette in P3. And what about this battle between Williams and Wildcats? I think that Williams has just done enough. Yes, they have. They're going to take home 4th with Wildcats in 5th. An incredible race. A brilliant work from the Kitty crew. Bryn, have a chat with them, please.
Spin the drive around. Congratulations. That was... Well, it looked fairly relaxed for you. We had a chat kind of halfway through the race there before you stepped into the seat, and you were mildly confident on things that could work for you, and it seemed to play nicely into your hands.
Yeah, Dan had an amazing run. I knew he would, but to pull something like that out, that was just incredible. For me, it was just hopping in, playing it safe, and keeping out of trouble.
Yeah, and the trouble was definitely going on behind you. We looked at Tire Wall, we looked at Baguette. They were having a really, really good fight. And actually, quite often you find when there are 2 teams having a fight, they slow down because that gives you a bit of time, a bit of breathing space. That kind of worked, but they were starting to nibble back at you.
Yeah, I saw quite a few changes for second. It looked like there was a great race back there. I know they were trying to push really hard, and I definitely wasn't. I was trying to keep it clean, keep it safe, not crash at all, and that's probably why they gained a little bit on me, but I think my pace was good and I was driving solid.
And actually, if we look at your results over the last 3 races, you guys have been pretty consistent. You've got some decent points. You now look like you've got a 4th, a 3rd, and a 1st. Not only have you got decent points, you've got $4,000 as well. So this is looking good for you if you can carry on in this vein.
Yeah, I think we can carry on for sure. We're just getting started, right? We've just improved every single time. We were 4th, and then we were 3rd, and now we're 1st. So we can only keep up this trend, hopefully.
Go and rest. Well done. There we go. Evan just given us a pretty good insight into what their mindset is like, really. We are going to take a very short break. We'll be back here for the next race, race number 4 of the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. 4 of 9 races. We're going back to 2 hours. We've taken a virtual trip across to the UK. We're back here now in France in many ways. Le Mans is where we're at, and Le Mans is where we're racing next. We'll see you very soon. If you want to check out more, if this has kind of excited you and you want to see what goes on for next season, go to lemonsports.com. You can sign up for information on season 2, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see you here next time.